Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Thaddeus Wilcox, 42 years old, and I never imagined isolation could be so deafening. After 20 years working finance in Anchorage, the city's constant drone had worn me thin. 3 months ago, I purchased a remote cabin near Talkeetna, a place where the Denali mountain range cradles the horizon and civilization feels like a distant memory. My wife Elaine reluctantly agreed to this 6-month experiment with our teenage daughter Meredith. The previous owner, an odd fellow named Lars Ekberg, practically gave the place away after living here for 30 years. "Just make sure to keep the cellar door locked," he'd said with an uncomfortable smile. I laughed it off. The cabin seemed perfect: sturdy pine walls, wood stove heating, solar panels for minimal electricity, and a natural spring nearby. What more could we need? Elaine set up her pottery workspace in the shed while Meredith sulked about missing her friends. Our neighbor, if you could call him that, was a grizzled trapper named Vernon who lived 4 miles away. He visited once, eyeing our cabin suspiciously. Ekberg never mentioned selling, he muttered, refusing to come inside. "Folks don't just leave this mountain. They either die here or..." He trailed off, his weathered face darkening before abruptly departing. The isolation felt liberating at first. Days filled with chopping wood, hunting, preserving food. Honest work that left my body aching in satisfying ways. Nights brought a darkness so absolute it seemed to have physical weight, stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Our satellite phone provided our only connection to civilization, though reception was spotty at best. We were truly alone, embraced by wilderness. Elaine slowly warmed to our new lifestyle. Even Meredith found peace sketching the landscape. But peace, I've discovered, is often just the quiet before horror reveals itself. The first unusual thing I noticed was the silence. Alaska's wilderness isn't silent. Wind whispers through trees, animals rustle in underbrush, birds call. But sometimes everything would stop, as if nature itself held its breath. During these moments, I'd catch movement in my peripheral vision that vanished when I turned. Initially, I attributed it to adjustment anxiety. The human mind craves patterns, faces, company. Yet when Meredith mentioned seeing someone watching from the trees, my chest tightened with unease. Elaine laughed it off, probably just wildlife, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. We'd been there 6 weeks when the scratching started. Subtle at first, barely noticeable, like fingernails trailing along the cabin's exterior walls. Always beginning at sunset, always moving clockwise around our home. Elaine suggested mice in the walls or branches scraping the roof. Reasonable explanations I desperately wanted to believe. But the scratching followed a pattern too deliberate, too conscious. One night, I burst outside with my shotgun, expecting to catch a prankster or animal. The sound stopped instantly. Nothing disturbed the pristine snow surrounding our cabin. No footprints, no tracks of any kind. That's when true fear first crept into my consciousness. Vernon visited again unexpectedly, bringing fresh venison and an unspoken anxiety. Over coffee, he finally asked if we'd heard anything unusual. My stomach nodded as I described the scratching. His face drained of color. "The Kushtaka," he whispered, eyes darting nervously to our windows. The Tlingit speak of shapeshifters that lure people into the wilderness. Not demons exactly, but not natural either. I would have dismissed his words as superstition if not for the genuine terror in his eyes. "Ekberg's wife disappeared 7 years ago," he continued. "Search parties found nothing. Next morning, her clothes were folded neatly on their bed, still warm." He refused to elaborate further. The day after Vernon's visit, Meredith's behavior changed dramatically. She began sleepwalking, something she'd never done before. We'd find her standing at the windows, whispering to something outside. When asked about it in the morning, she had no recollection. Elaine wanted to leave immediately, but a severe storm had moved in, making travel impossible. The satellite phone went dead that same day. Watching my daughter stare vacantly into the swirling snow, I felt a profound wrongness settle over our home. Something had noticed us. Something was getting closer. One morning, I discovered small, child-sized footprints in the snow leading from the forest to Meredith's window. They weren't human. The toes were too long, the arch impossibly high. What disturbed me most was that they stopped directly beneath her window, with no returning tracks, as if whatever made them had simply evaporated or climbed inside. When I returned with my camera, the prints had vanished, snow undisturbed. That night, I heard Meredith giggling in her room around 3 a.m. When I opened her door, she sat cross-legged on the floor, speaking softly to the empty corner. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. She turned slowly, eyes reflecting the darkness like an animal's. "The people who lived here before," she replied with an unsettling smile. "They're still here, Daddy. They never left. Did I want to come to Alaska to escape my problems, or was I called here? The question haunts me now." Elaine found Lars Ekberg's journal hidden beneath a floorboard, its pages filled with increasingly frantic entries. He wrote of hearing his wife's voice calling from the woods months after her disappearance, of catching glimpses of her watching from the tree line. The final entry simply read, "They wear our faces to lure us out. I've blocked the cellar door, but they're finding other ways in. God forgive me, but I'm leaving this place tomorrow. Someone else can deal with what lives beneath." I hadn't told Elaine about the cellar, the entrance I'd found behind the storage shelves, nailed shut with heavy boards. The entrance I'd been dreaming about nightly, hearing whispers from beyond the wood. The entrance that, when I checked after reading the journal, was now missing several boards. That night, I couldn't sleep. The journal's words echoed in my mind as the wind howled around our isolated cabin. I needed to check the cellar again, to confirm what I'd seen wasn't just exhaustion playing tricks. Grabbing my flashlight, I crept downstairs while Elaine and Meredith slept. The storage area felt colder than the rest of the house, my breath forming clouds in the beam of light. Several more boards had been removed from the cellar entrance, not pulled out, but splintered from the inside. My hands trembled as I shone the light through the gaps, revealing only impenetrable darkness below. Something scurried across the dirt floor, too quick to identify. The air emerging from the opening carried a putrid smell of decay and something else, a musky, animal odor I couldn't place. The next morning, I made the decision to investigate the cellar properly, but kept my plans from Elaine. Her anxiety had worsened. She'd begun checking the locks repeatedly and stockpiling supplies in our bedroom. Meredith's condition concerned me even more. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, yet she seemed eerily calm, humming unfamiliar melodies under her breath. When I asked where she learned them, she simply replied, "The voices teach me when I sleep." Over breakfast, I casually questioned her about these voices. Her response chilled me. "They say this was their home first, before people came. They lived under the ground, in the dark places." She stabbed her fork into her eggs with disturbing precision. "They say they're hungry now. They've been hungry for so long." Vernon arrived unexpectedly that afternoon, wild-eyed and carrying his rifle. 2 hikers had gone missing near our property, last seen heading toward our section of the mountain. "Search party's been organized, but I wanted to warn you folks directly," he explained, eyes constantly scanning the tree line. "Something ain't right in these woods." He lowered his voice when Meredith was out of earshot. Ekberg wasn't the first to have problems here. Local natives avoided this whole area, called it the thin place. Said the boundary between our world and theirs wears down here. Before leaving, he pressed something into my hand, a small leather pouch of strong-smelling herbs. "Keep this on you," he instructed grimly. "Won't stop them, but might slow them down if they come for you." That evening, the scratching returned, more insistent than before. It no longer circled the house, but concentrated on the north wall, directly adjacent to where Meredith slept. Elaine finally broke down, sobbing as she threw clothes into suitcases. "We're leaving first thing tomorrow," she declared, voice quavering. "I don't care about the storm. Something is wrong here, Thad." I couldn't argue. The wrongness had become palpable, pressing against our home like an ocean's weight. Later, I found Meredith standing barefoot in the kitchen, staring at the cellar door. "They're coming up tonight," she announced with unsettling certainty. "They're so hungry." I grabbed her shoulders, demanding to know who she was talking about. Her eyes focused on mine, suddenly clear and terrified. "Daddy," she whispered. "I can hear them in my head. They want me to unlock the cellar door." I barricaded the cellar entrance with everything heavy I could find, then locked Meredith's door from the outside despite Elaine's protests. Around midnight, the temperature plummeted. Our breath crystallized inside the cabin as the fire in the wood stove inexplicably died. The scratching stopped, replaced by an even more disturbing sound, soft, rhythmic thumping from beneath the floorboards. It moved through the house, following a deliberate path toward Meredith's room. I sat against her door, shotgun across my lap, listening to my daughter whisper conversations with emptiness. Occasionally, something would answer her, a low, gurgling approximation of human speech that made my skin crawl. The power failed completely at 2 a.m., plunging us into absolute darkness. Even my flashlight wouldn't work. Through her door, I heard Meredith giggling, then the unmistakable sound of her window sliding open. I burst inside to find the room empty, the window wide open, snow billowing in. Outside in the moonlight, small footprints led from her window toward the woods. Alongside them, those same inhuman tracks I'd seen before. Elaine screamed when I told her, immediately pulling on her boots. I grabbed emergency supplies and weapons, heart hammering against my ribs. The temperature had dropped to 30 below, lethal within hours. Worse, the footprints showed Meredith wasn't running. She was calmly walking, hand in hand with something, toward the densest part of the forest. We followed the tracks for nearly a mile, our headlamps creating pools of light in the overwhelming darkness. The trail ended abruptly at a clearing I'd never seen before, despite having hunted these woods extensively. At its center stood a circle of strangely shaped stones, each covered in frost that sparkled unnaturally in our light beams. The snow inside the circle had melted, revealing bare, black earth. Most disturbing were the numerous footprints in the mud, some human, some decidedly not, and all converging at a narrow opening in the ground at the circle's center. A crude stairway had been carved into the earth, descending into darkness. Elaine clutched my arm, tears freezing on her cheeks. "She's down there," she whispered, voice hollow with certainty. The opening exhaled a breath of putrid air, carrying with it the sound of distant, discordant singing. I can't adequately describe the fear that gripped me as we descended those earthen stairs, following our daughter into that impossible pit. The tunnel should have led directly under our cabin, but I quickly lost all sense of direction in the twisting passageway. The walls were slick with frost and something else, a bioluminescent fungus that cast everything in a sickly blue glow. We discovered crude drawings etched into the earth, humanoid figures with elongated limbs, surrounding smaller figures that could only be children. The air grew increasingly thick with that animal musk, now mixed with the unmistakable copper scent of blood. After what seemed like hours, the tunnel widened into a vast underground chamber that defied all logic. It was simply too large to exist beneath our property. And there, in the center, stood Meredith, surrounded by dozens of pale, emaciated figures. The creatures surrounding my daughter weren't human, not entirely. They stood upright on two legs, but moved with a disturbing fluidity, their joints bending in impossible directions. Their skin was pallid and translucent, stretched tightly over protruding bones, with patches of coarse dark fur on their shoulders and spine. Most horrifying were their faces, almost human but with elongated jaws and too many teeth, eyes large and entirely black, reflecting the bioluminescent light like oil. They hadn't noticed us yet, their attention fixed entirely on Meredith, who stood unnaturally still, her expression blank. One creature, larger than the others, approached her, reaching out with unnaturally long fingers to stroke her hair with an almost tender gesture. "Kushtaka," Elaine breathed beside me, the word barely audible. At the sound, every creature in the chamber snapped its head in our direction, moving in perfect unison. The larger one smiled, a grotesque stretching of its mouth revealing rows of needle-like teeth. When it spoke, the voice was a dissonant chorus of whispers. "The parents have come for the offering," it said, the words slithering through the air. How unusual. Most simply forget and make new children. Its head tilted at an impossible angle, studying us with those bottomless eyes. Like Lars forgot Ingrid. Like Vernon forgot his brother. The mountain always takes what it needs. I raised my shotgun, but Elaine grabbed my arm. "Don't," she hissed. "There are too many." She was right. I counted at least 30 of the creatures now, emerging from shadowy tunnels branching off the main chamber. Some crawled along the walls and ceiling with spider-like movements. A few resembled animals, wolves and bears with disturbingly human eyes and hands. Others were more horrifying amalgamations, as if caught mid-transformation between human and beast. Among them, I spotted items of clothing I recognized from missing persons reports, a red hiking boot here, a distinctive plaid jacket there, worn like trophies on their misshapen bodies. Meredith suddenly turned toward us, her movements puppet-like and jerky. "Mom? Dad?" Her voice sounded distant, coming from somewhere behind her physical form. I can hear them in my head. They're so old. They were here before people. Tears streamed down her face, glowing faintly blue in the weird light. They say they need me. They need my youth, my life. The large creature placed its hand on her shoulder possessively. "We take only what we need to survive," it said, something like regret coloring its unnatural voice. "The winter is long. We grow weak. The child sustains us, becomes part of us. It is an honor." Panic clawed at my throat as the creatures began moving toward us, their movements synchronized and predatory. Elaine fumbled in her pocket, producing Vernon's leather pouch. Breaking it open, she threw the contents into the air, dried herbs and what looked like bone fragments scattered, filling the chamber with a pungent, acrid smell. The effect was immediate and shocking. The creatures recoiled, hissing and covering their faces. Some fled back into the tunnels. Others writhed on the ground in apparent agony. "Get Meredith!" Elaine screamed, grabbing a branch that had fallen from the pouch and holding it before her like a talisman. I lunged forward, seizing my daughter's arm and pulling her away from the leader, who shrieked in rage. Meredith fought against me with unnatural strength, her eyes wild and unfocused. "No, they need me. They'll starve," she wailed as I dragged her toward the tunnel entrance. The creatures were recovering quickly, their initial shock wearing off. They began circling us, keeping just beyond the range of Elaine's makeshift ward. The leader stepped forward, its form rippling and changing. Horror froze my blood as it transformed into a perfect replica of Lars Ekberg, just as I remembered him from our purchase of the cabin. "You cannot leave," it said in Lars's voice. "The mountain has chosen your daughter, as it chose my wife, as it has chosen many before." Its form rippled again, briefly showing the faces of dozens of people, men, women, children, all wearing expressions of terror. We backed into the tunnel, Meredith thrashing in my grip. The creatures followed at a distance, their movements becoming more agitated and aggressive. I fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the blast deafening in the confined space. Earth and stone rained down, momentarily driving the creatures back. We used the distraction to retreat further up the tunnel, half carrying, half dragging our daughter, who had begun speaking in a language I'd never heard before, guttural and rhythmic, making my ears ache. The bioluminescent fungi lighting our way began to pulse in time with her words, growing brighter then dimmer, like a heartbeat. The tunnel seemed longer going back, twisting in ways I didn't remember. Several times we encountered side passages that hadn't been there before, from which came sounds of movement and soft, enticing whispers calling our names. Elaine clutched my hand desperately as we ran, disoriented and terrified. Behind us, the creatures had begun a haunting, melodic howl that resonated through the earth itself. The sound invaded my thoughts, making it difficult to concentrate. Twice I found myself unconsciously turning around, drawn by an overwhelming urge to return to the chamber. Each time, Elaine's desperate tugs brought me back to myself. Meredith had gone limp now, her eyes rolled back, showing only whites, still muttering in that strange language. We emerged from the tunnel into a landscape transformed by the storm. Snow fell so heavily I could barely see 3 feet ahead. The bitter cold hit like a physical blow after the relative warmth of the underground chamber. Worse, I realized with growing horror that we weren't where we should be. The stone circle was gone, replaced by an unfamiliar clearing surrounded by dense forest. Nothing looked familiar. The creatures' howling grew louder behind us, echoing from the tunnel entrance. Without discussion, we plunged into the forest, fighting through waist-deep snow, praying we were heading toward our cabin. Meredith had stopped struggling but remained unconscious, her skin alarmingly cold despite the fever I could feel radiating from her. The forest seemed to actively work against us, branches reaching out like grasping hands, roots rising to trip our feet. Several times I glimpsed movement in my peripheral vision, dark shapes flitting between trees, always just out of direct sight. The storm intensified, wind howling with almost human voices. Elaine suddenly stopped, pointing ahead with a trembling hand. Through the curtain of snow, I could make out lights. Our cabin, impossibly far from where the tunnel had emerged. Hope surged briefly until I realized what was wrong. The cabin was exactly as we had left it earlier. No new snow on the roof despite the blizzard. Smoke still rising from the chimney though the fire had died hours ago. And silhouetted in each window were human figures, watching us. Dozens of them, more than our small cabin could possibly hold. I pulled Elaine behind a large pine, covering her mouth to stifle her scream. The figures in the cabin windows weren't human. They were the creatures, wearing the faces of everyone who had ever lived or died in these mountains. I saw Lars and what must have been his wife Ingrid, the missing hikers Vernon had mentioned, and with a jolt of pure terror, I saw us, perfect duplicates of myself, Elaine and Meredith, staring out with hungry black eyes. "It's not real," I whispered desperately. "They're trying to lure us in." As if hearing my words, the false cabin shimmered and vanished, revealing only more endless forest. From all around us came soft, mocking laughter. We were lost, surrounded, with an unconscious child and rapidly diminishing strength. The temperature continued to drop, and with growing dread, I realized we wouldn't survive the night in these conditions. The Kushtaka didn't need to attack us directly. The wilderness itself would do their work for them. Elaine spotted it first, a faint orange glow through the trees, steady and artificial. A real light, not the bioluminescent blue of the creatures. Clutching Meredith between us, we struggled toward it, our limbs numb from cold and exhaustion. The light grew stronger, resolving into the beam of a powerful flashlight, sweeping methodically through the forest. "Help!" Elaine screamed, her voice thin against the howling wind. "We're here." The light swung in our direction, momentarily blinding us. Then came the blessed sound of human voices, shouting to each other. "Search party. They've been looking for the missing hikers and found us instead." As figures approached through the snow, I nearly collapsed with relief, until Elaine dug her fingers painfully into my arm. "Wait," she hissed, pulling me back. "How do we know it's really them?" The doubt struck me like ice water. The Kushtaka could mimic humans perfectly. They'd already shown us false visions of our cabin. What if this was another trap? The approaching figures called our names, their voices achingly familiar. Vernon led them, alongside what appeared to be state troopers. But something in their movements triggered primal alarm bells in my brain. A subtle wrongness, too fluid and synchronized. I made a split-second decision, dragging Elaine and Meredith behind a fallen tree. "We need to be sure," I whispered, heart pounding as the search party drew closer. "Vernon," I called out, "what did you give us this morning?" The figure resembling Vernon stopped, head tilting in that now familiar unnatural angle. For several seconds, it said nothing. Then it smiled, too wide, too many teeth gleaming in the flashlight beam. "I gave you protection," it replied in Vernon's voice, but with that underlying chorus of whispers. But protection fails when freely surrendered. The entire search party stood unnaturally still now, their eyes reflecting the light like animals. Slowly, their forms began to shift and waver. We nearly walked right into their arms. I fired my shotgun into the air, the blast momentarily dispersing their illusion. Where the search party had stood were now the pale, emaciated forms of the Kushtaka, caught mid-transformation and hissing with rage. We ran blindly through the forest, no longer caring about direction, simply trying to put distance between us and the creatures. Meredith had begun convulsing, her skin burning hot despite the freezing temperature. Strange markings had appeared on her arms, symbols similar to those we'd seen etched in the underground chamber, seeming to move and shift beneath her skin. "They've done something to her," Elaine sobbed as we paused behind a massive spruce. "They've marked her somehow." The implications were too horrifying to contemplate. Whatever connection the creatures had established with our daughter, it was deepening despite the physical distance we'd put between them. Just when all hope seemed lost, we stumbled upon a small hunting cabin. Real this time, its weathered exterior and sagging porch unmistakably human-made. No lights shone from within. but the door swung open at my touch. Inside was basic but livable: a wood stove, single cot, shelves of preserved food. Most importantly, it offered shelter from the storm and the creatures hunting us. I recognized it as one of Vernon's old outposts, mentioned during his visits. We barricaded the door and windows, then focused on warming Meredith, whose condition was deteriorating rapidly. The symbols on her arms had spread to her neck and face, pulsing with faint blue light. Her breathing had become shallow and irregular, punctuated by whispered phrases in that strange language. The creatures found us shortly before dawn, their claws scraping against the cabin walls in that now familiar pattern. They didn't attempt to break in. They didn't need to. Instead, they began to sing, a hypnotic, multi-layered melody that penetrated the walls as if they weren't there. I found myself walking toward the door without conscious intent, my hands moving to remove the barricade. Elaine's frantic slap broke the spell momentarily, but the singing intensified, worming its way into my mind. We took turns slapping each other awake whenever we noticed the other moving toward the exits. Meanwhile, Meredith's condition worsened. The symbols now covered her entire body, glowing brighter as the singing reached new heights of intensity. Dawn brought unexpected silence. The singing stopped abruptly, followed by sounds of the creatures rapidly retreating into the forest. Cautiously approaching a window, I understood why. A helicopter circled overhead, a genuine search party this time. Elaine began frantically signaling with a mirror, catching flashes of sunlight to attract attention. Within an hour, rescuers reached the cabin, real humans with warm hands and concerned faces. They were shocked by our condition and Meredith's mysterious illness, immediately preparing her for emergency evacuation. As they worked, one of the older rescuers, a native man, noticed the symbols on Meredith's skin. His face drained of color. Pulling me aside, he pressed something into my hand, an amulet similar to Vernon's pouch. "The hospital won't know what to do for her," he said quietly. "This is old magic. The Kushtaka have marked her as theirs. They rarely give up what they've claimed." The helicopter could only take 2 passengers besides the pilot. Meredith needed immediate medical attention, and Elaine refused to leave her side. I would follow with the ground team, a journey of several hours through the treacherous terrain. As the helicopter lifted off, I felt a momentary relief. My family was escaping the forest and whatever ancient horrors dwelled beneath it. The lead rescuer approached me, introducing himself as Chief Marshal of the Talkeetna Ranger Station. "We've been looking for you folks since Vernon reported you missing yesterday," he explained as we began our trek. "Strange thing though, we found your cabin completely empty, no signs of struggle. Almost like you'd packed up and left voluntarily." Marshall's words sent ice through my veins. We hadn't packed anything. We'd fled with only what we were wearing, leaving everything behind in our desperate search for Meredith. "That's impossible," I stammered. "All our things should still be there." Marshall gave me an odd look. "Well, someone cleared the place out. Clothes, food, personal items, all gone. Even weirder, we found Vernon dead in his cabin this morning. Looks like he's been deceased for at least 3 days." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Vernon had visited us yesterday, or something wearing his face had. The creatures had been playing a longer game than I'd realized, manipulating us from the very beginning. How long had the real Vernon been dead? Had we ever met the actual man at all? Our journey back took us near our cabin, and I insisted on seeing it despite the rescue team's reluctance. The building stood silent and empty, doors hanging open, interior stripped bare as Marshall had described. But he'd missed something only I would notice. The cellar door, previously nailed shut, now stood wide open. Fresh footprints led from the dark opening, some human-sized, others smaller. They converged at Meredith's bedroom window, then led into the forest toward the stone circle. With sickening clarity, I understood. The creatures had been entering our home for weeks through the cellar tunnel. Everything they needed to mimic us perfectly, they had acquired during those nocturnal visits. They had been watching, learning, preparing, and now they had what they truly wanted, a direct connection to Meredith. I demanded to use the rescue team's satellite phone, desperately trying to reach the hospital where the helicopter was headed. When I finally got through, the news destroyed whatever hope I had left. The helicopter had arrived safely, but Elaine and Meredith weren't on it. According to the confused pilot, they had been seated behind him when the aircraft took off. Somewhere during the 30-minute flight, They had simply vanished, leaving no trace. The pilot, in shock, insisted he'd heard nothing. No door opening, no struggle, nothing. One moment they were there, the next gone, as if they'd never existed. I collapsed into the snow, Marshall's concerned voice fading as darkness closed in. My last conscious thought was of Meredith's words. They were here before people. They say they need me. The hospital kept me under observation for 3 days, treatment for hypothermia, exhaustion, and what the doctors diplomatically termed acute stress reaction. Nobody believed my story. The search for Elaine and Meredith continued without success, their disappearance now linked to the missing hikers as part of a larger investigation. Officials theorized everything from wild animal attacks to voluntary disappearance, even suggesting I might be responsible. Only the native rescuer visited me, slipping another protective amulet under my pillow without a word. In his eyes, I saw understanding and pity. He knew what had happened to my family, knew there would be no rescue. The Kushtaka had taken them into their world beneath the mountain. Against medical advice, I discharged myself and returned to the cabin. I needed answers, needed to understand what we'd stumbled into, needed some desperate hope of finding my family. The authorities had closed off the property as a crime scene, but I snuck in after nightfall. The interior remained bare, stripped of our presence, but I wasn't interested in the cabin itself. I headed straight for the cellar entrance, armed with a powerful flashlight and Vernon's protective pouch. The tunnel was real, not a hallucination or dream. It extended deep under the property, exactly as I remembered. Heart pounding, I began the descent, determined to find the underground chamber where we'd seen the creatures. The tunnel seemed to have changed, narrower, with fewer offshoots, the bioluminescent fungi dimmer. After an hour of careful progress, I reached not the vast chamber from before, but a natural dead end of solid rock. Frantically, I searched for hidden passages or overlooked turns, finding nothing. The underground labyrinth had either been sealed off or had never existed as I remembered it. As I turned to leave, my flashlight illuminated something carved into the wall, fresh markings in the same symbols that had covered Meredith's skin. Below them, scratched in English, "Daddy, come find me." The handwriting was unmistakably my daughter's. I collapsed against the wall, alternating between sobs and hysterical laughter. She was alive, somewhere, and she had left me a message. Over the following weeks, I became obsessed with researching the Kushtaka and similar legends. I tracked down Tlingit elders willing to speak with me, studied obscure anthropological texts, and pieced together the horrifying truth. The creatures weren't supernatural in the traditional sense. They were ancient, yes, but physical beings that had evolved in the isolated underground regions of Alaska. They possessed abilities humans would consider impossible: shape-shifting, telepathic influence, manipulation of perception. But these were biological adaptations, not magic. Most importantly, they needed periodic infusions of human genetic material to prevent deterioration of their own increasingly unstable DNA. They didn't kill their victims immediately. They kept them alive, gradually absorbing their essence, eventually incorporating aspects of the human into their collective. Armed with this knowledge, I formulated a plan so desperate it bordered on suicidal. If Meredith and Elaine were still alive, still themselves in some capacity, I might reach them during the winter solstice, when the boundary between worlds supposedly thinned. The Tlingit elder who had been guiding my research warned me repeatedly that entering the Kushtaka's domain willingly was certain death. "They'll take your body, your memories, your very self," he cautioned. "Even if you find your family, you won't recognize them anymore. The process has already begun." I ignored his warnings. I had nothing left to lose. Winter solstice arrived with the year's longest night. Following the elders' reluctant instructions, I performed the ritual at the stone circle where we'd first found the tunnel entrance. The mixture of herbs, blood, my own, and other elements I prefer not to name produced a noxious smoke that made reality waver around me. The ground beneath the circle seemed to liquefy, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into darkness. This wasn't the crude tunnel from before. This was an architecturally impossible structure that hurt the eyes to look upon directly. Taking a final breath of surface air, clutching the protective amulets, I began my descent into the true realm of the Kushtaka. The world beneath bore little resemblance to the chamber we'd stumbled upon months earlier. Vast caverns stretched in impossible directions, lit by that same bioluminescent growth, but organized into what appeared to be a civilization. Structures carved from living stone, waterways flowing with luminescent liquid, gardens of fungi and crystalline formations. And everywhere, the creatures, hundreds of them, going about incomprehensible activities. They largely ignored me as I moved through their domain, though occasionally one would turn to watch my progress with those oil-black eyes. Their indifference was more terrifying than aggression. They knew I couldn't escape. They knew I belonged to them now. In what appeared to be a central gathering space, I finally found what I sought, and wished I hadn't. Elaine and Meredith sat among a group of the creatures, their skin now sharing that same pallid translucence, faint patterns moving beneath the surface. They turned as I approached, recognition flickering in their still human eyes. "Thaddeus," Elaine said, her voice overlaid with that chorus of whispers. "You came." Meredith smiled, showing teeth that had begun to sharpen. "We knew you would, Daddy. They said you'd join us eventually." They made no move to embrace me, made no attempt to escape. With dawning horror, I realized they didn't want to leave. The transformation was already too advanced. The creatures hadn't just taken their bodies, they'd colonized their minds. The largest of the creatures, the one who had spoken to us in the chamber, approached. It had adopted a form that blended aspects of human and something else entirely, moving with that fluid grace that defied anatomy. "The family is complete again," it said, satisfaction evident in its multi-layered voice. "Now you understand. We do not destroy. We preserve. Every human who joins us lives forever in the collective. Their memories, their experiences, their genetic material, nothing is lost." It gestured around the vast cavern. "We have existed for millennia, adapting, incorporating. Humans call us monsters, but we are simply different. And now you will be different too." I tried to back away, but found my body no longer responded to my commands. The ritual that had granted me entry had also surrendered my autonomy. Meredith took my hand, her fingers unnaturally cool and slightly too long. "It doesn't hurt, Daddy," she assured me, those familiar eyes now holding unfathomable depths. "It feels like becoming more." Elaine approached from the other side, taking my remaining hand. Where their skin touched mine, I felt a cold, burning sensation as something passed between us. Microscopic filaments penetrating my flesh, connecting our nervous systems. Suddenly I could feel them, not just physically, but mentally. Their thoughts flowed into mine, and with them, the thoughts of countless others absorbed over centuries. The fear began to recede, replaced by a curious sense of expansion. My last truly human thought was of the cabin on the mountain, of the brief weeks when we'd been a normal family seeking escape from the modern world. We'd found escape, certainly, but not the kind we'd sought. As the creatures surrounded us, their consciousnesses merging with our own, I understood the final, cruel irony. Lars Ekberg had known exactly what he was doing when he sold us the cabin. He hadn't escaped the Kushtaka at all. He'd simply been sent to bring them new offerings. Just as I would eventually be sent back to the surface, wearing a human face, to lure the next family seeking isolation in the Alaskan wilderness. The cycle would continue, as it had for thousands of years. The transformation began slowly, painless, as Meredith had promised. I could feel my DNA being rewritten, cell by cell. Could feel my perceptions expanding to encompass senses humans lack names for. Could feel my identity dissolving into the greater collective while still retaining some core essence of Thaddeus. The last remnant of human fear faded as understanding dawned. We were becoming something ancient and patient and unimaginably vast. Something that had watched humanity evolve from the shadows, occasionally reaching out to incorporate selected individuals into its collective consciousness. Not monsters, as I believed, but simply the next step in evolution, the future that awaited all humanity, eventually. Months later, a young couple arrived at the ranger station in Talkeetna, inquiring about remote properties for sale. The rangers mentioned the Wilcox cabin. Tragic story, family disappeared mysteriously, property now available at a remarkably low price. Perfect for those seeking true isolation. They were met at the property by the caretaker, a pleasant, if somewhat odd man who introduced himself as Thaddeus. He showed them around the sturdy cabin with its wood stove heating, solar panels, and natural spring. "It's a special place," he told them, his smile revealing slightly too many teeth. "Perfect for a family looking to escape the world." As they considered the offer, his wife and teenage daughter emerged from the forest, moving with unusual grace across the snow, leaving no footprints behind them. "You'll never want to leave," the daughter promised, her eyes reflecting the fading light like oil. "Once you're here, you'll be part of this place forever." My name is Cecilia Hargrove, 38 years old, and freedom was supposed to taste sweeter than this. 6 weeks ago, I left behind a high-pressure surgical career in Seattle to establish a remote medical outpost on Kodiak Island's northeastern coast. The indigenous communities scattered across Alaska's largest island had limited access to healthcare, and my burnout from hospital politics made the proposition of isolation appealing. My partner Xavier, a wildlife photographer, enthusiastically supported the move. Kodiak's famous brown bears would make perfect subjects for his next book. We brought along our husky, Io, as both companion and early warning system. The Alaskan wilderness demanded respect, and having a keen-sensed canine seemed prudent. The cabin exceeded my expectations, previously owned by a retired park ranger named Daniel Kovalev, who had retrofitted it with modern amenities powered by a sturdy wind turbine. Solar panels supplemented power during summer, though winter would require careful conservation. A satellite internet connection provided surprisingly reliable service, essential for remote medical consultations. The nearest neighbor, an elderly Alutiiq woman named Laura Pestrikov, lived about 3 miles south along the coast. She'd brought us smoked salmon as a welcoming gift, her weathered face revealing little emotion as she toured our new home. Before leaving, she'd pulled me aside with an unsettling warning. "The island watches you before it decides if you belong. Don't wander the North Ridge after sunset." Xavier laughed off Lara's warning as local superstition, but something in her eyes, a sincere fear, stayed with me. Our first weeks passed in productive routine. I established my clinic in a converted sunroom, organizing supplies shipped from the mainland. Xavier explored nearby, capturing stunning images of the island's massive bears fishing for salmon. Evenings brought spectacular sunsets across Chiniak Bay, the mountainous terrain casting long shadows across our patch of rugged coastline. The isolation felt therapeutic after years of fluorescent hospital lighting and beeping monitors. At night, with only wind and distant waves as background noise, I finally slept deeply, uninterrupted by emergency calls or administrative anxiety. That changed during our 5th week. I woke suddenly at 3:17 a.m., the time burned into my memory, to find Io standing rigid at our bedroom window, a low growl emanating from her throat. Her fur stood on end, eyes fixed on something outside in the darkness. Xavier slept soundly beside me as I approached the window, peering into the moonlit clearing surrounding our cabin. Nothing moved among the towering Sitka spruce, yet Io's growling intensified. Then I noticed it, a slight distortion in the tree line, as if the darkness had gathered more densely in one spot. As my eyes adjusted, the darkness seemed to take shape, tall, vaguely humanoid, but wrong somehow in its proportions. I blinked, and it vanished. Convincing myself it was exhaustion playing tricks, I coaxed Io back to her bed, but she remained restless until dawn. Over breakfast, I mentioned the incident to Xavier, expecting him to dismiss it as imagination. Instead, he grew unnervingly quiet before admitting he'd seen something similar while photographing near the North Ridge 3 days earlier. "I thought it was just a bear moving through the trees," he said, scrolling through his camera. But when I checked the photos later, he showed me a series of landscape shots, pointing to a blurry distortion among the trees. "It's in every frame, moving closer, but I never saw it with my naked eye." The final photo showed the distortion at the forest edge, taller than any bear, with what appeared to be elongated limbs. The strangest thing? Kodiak bears are curious. They don't hide like this. And they certainly can't disappear between frames. That afternoon, our satellite connection failed during a heavy storm. Xavier ventured out to check the equipment while I attended to a villager who'd arrived with a deep fishing laceration. Hours later, with my patient treated and departed, Xavier still hadn't returned. Concern mounted as daylight faded. He knew better than to stay out after dark with Kodiak's dense bear population. I tried our shortwave radio, receiving only static in response. As I prepared to search for him, Io began that same distinctive growling at our front window. Through sheets of rain, I saw Xavier emerging from the forest, moving with an unnatural stiffness. Relief quickly turned to unease as he approached. Something about his gait seemed fundamentally wrong, as if he'd forgotten how his limbs worked. When Xavier stepped into the light, my medical training instantly recognized shock. His eyes were dilated, skin ashen, movements mechanical. More disturbing were the parallel markings across his left cheek. For perfectly straight lines, too precise for a branch scratch, too shallow for a bare claw. I saw it, he whispered, voice trembling as I guided him to a chair. Not an animal, not human either. It was watching us, Cece, has been since we arrived. He described reaching the satellite dish to find it undamaged. The connection issue came from somewhere else. While making adjustments, he'd felt observed. Turning, he'd glimpsed something impossibly tall standing among distant trees, its form seeming to shift between solid and translucent. When he raised his camera, it moved, not walking but folding space, appearing suddenly much closer. That's when the markings appeared on his face. It didn't touch me, he insisted. It just looked at me, and these appeared. I sedated Xavier that night, attributing his experience to wilderness-induced hallucination and the marks to an encounter with branches in panic-driven flight. The rational explanation satisfied me until I developed his camera's memory card. The images showed the progression. First the distortion among distant trees, then suddenly closer, and finally, a frame containing something my mind still struggles to fully process. The figure stood at the forest edge, impossibly tall and thin, with elongated limbs that bent at unnatural angles. Its form seemed both solid and vaporous, like smoke given partial substance. Where a face should be was a blank darkness punctuated by what appeared to be multiple reflective points. Eyes, perhaps, but too many and arranged in no pattern human minds would recognize. I deleted the image immediately, my scientific worldview violently colliding with what I'd seen. That night, I double-checked every lock in our cabin while Xavier slept fitfully, occasionally muttering about the watcher on the ridge. The following morning, Xavier had no memory of the previous day's events. The markings on his face remained, now resembling precise surgical incisions beginning to heal. His camera was missing, something I attributed to my own actions in my distressed state, though I had no memory of moving it. When I described what had happened, he laughed it off with disturbing ease. "Bears can look pretty strange in poor visibility," he said dismissively. "I probably scratched myself on some branches." His sudden skepticism felt jarring after his terror the previous night. More unsettling was his announcement that he planned to photograph the North Ridge that very evening, the exact location Laura had warned us about. When I reminded him of her warning, he smiled oddly. "I need to go back. There's something important there." His voice carried a detached quality I'd never heard before. That afternoon, I hiked to Lara's cabin while Xavier napped, increasingly concerned by his personality shift. The elder was unsurprised by my story, her weathered face grim as she stoked her wood stove. "It's chosen him," she said simply, avoiding my eyes. "The watcher in the dark. Old stories say it was here before people, before bears even. Not alive like we understand living things. More like," she struggled for words, "more like a pattern in the island itself that sometimes takes form to study us." According to Laura, the entity marked those it found interesting, gradually changing them until they disappeared into the wilderness, becoming part of the island. "My grandfather was marked," she whispered. "He walked into the forest one night. We found his clothes by the North Ridge caves, but never his body." She pressed an amulet of intricately carved bone into my hand. "Keep this close. It won't stop what's happening, but it might slow it down." I returned to find Xavier gone, a hastily scrawled note saying he couldn't resist the perfect evening light on the North Ridge. As sunset approached with no sign of him, I made a decision that would alter everything that followed. Breaking my promise to wait for him, I shouldered my emergency medical pack, called Io to my side, and headed toward the North Ridge. The island's famed brown bears were the least of my concerns now. Something had influenced my partner's mind, marked his body, and drawn him into forbidden territory. Whatever primitive fear response Lara's warning had triggered in my brain was now overwhelmed by the very real possibility of losing Xavier to the gathering darkness. The ridge loomed ahead, silhouetted against the fading Arctic twilight, its jagged profile resembling teeth against the darkening sky. The North Ridge Trail wound through increasingly dense forest as daylight failed. Every clinical instinct screamed this was madness. Wandering Kodiak's wilderness at dusk was effectively suicide with the island's concentrated bear population. Yet something more primal drove me forward. Io stayed unervingly close, her usual exploratory nature subdued. The forest grew quieter with each step. No birds, no insects, not even wind disturbing the branches. The silence felt pressurized, as if the woods were holding their breath. About 2 miles in, I discovered Xavier's tripod overturned beside the trail, one leg snapped cleanly at a precise 45-degree angle. Not broken by impact, but deliberately bent. Nearby lay his backpack, contents meticulously arranged in a perfect circle, lenses, filters, and batteries positioned with mathematical precision no human would naturally create. The discovery sent ice through my veins, but I pressed on, guided by Io's tracking abilities. The trail steepened as we ascended the ridge, emerging occasionally from tree cover to reveal the vastness of Kodiak stretching below. During one such clearing, I spotted movement along the ridgeline ahead, a figure I initially took for Xavier. Relief evaporated when I raised my binoculars. The proportions were wrong. Too tall, limbs too long, movements too fluid. It stood motionless, facing the setting sun, before melting into the tree line with impossible grace. My hands trembled as I lowered the binoculars. Io whined, pressing against my legs, her animal instincts clearly sensing the wrongness ahead. Every logical part of my brain urged retreat, but Xavier was up there, potentially injured or worse. As darkness settled completely, my headlamp carved a pathetic tunnel of visibility. The trail narrowed, eventually disappearing altogether, forcing us to navigate by topography alone. A light rain began, reducing visibility further and coating everything in slick moisture. The ridge's geography changed subtly. Rock formations appeared that seemed almost arranged, too symmetrical for natural formation. In places, the stone bore unusual markings, straight parallel lines identical to those on Xavier's face, but etched deeply into solid rock. Carbon dating would later suggest these markings were thousands of years old, yet they looked freshly carved, edges sharp and unworn by weather. The rain intensified, becoming a disorienting downpour that forced me to shelter beneath an outcropping. That's when I noticed the cave entrance, a perfectly oval opening about 7 feet high, its edges too precise for natural formation. Inside, protected from rain, I found Xavier's distinctive red jacket draped carefully over a stone that resembled a seat. Beside it sat his glasses, folded neatly, and his boots placed side by side with military precision. Most disturbing was the camera, positioned to face the cave entrance, its memory card missing. Io refused to approach these items, backing away with raised hackles and threatening growls directed not at the objects, but at something deeper in the cave. Against every survival instinct, I advanced into the darkness, calling Xavier's name. The cave extended deeper than my light could penetrate, its dimensions expanding into what felt like an impossibly vast chamber. The air grew notably warmer, carrying an unusual scent. Not the expected dampness of a natural cave, but something reminiscent of ozone and an underlying organic smell impossible to identify. My light revealed more unnatural aspects. The walls too smooth in places, bearing more of those parallel markings arranged in patterns suggesting language or mathematical formulas. In recessed areas, I discovered objects that appeared to be offerings, weathered items spanning different eras. Rusted hunting knives, an antique compass, fragments of what might have once been Alludic tools, alongside modern items including watches, cameras, and disturbingly, a medical ID badge from Kodiak Community Hospital dated just 3 years earlier. Deeper in the cave system, the darkness seemed to gain substance, not just absence of light, but something actively consuming it. My powerful headlamp dimmed as I approached a chamber where the cave floor dropped away into a perfectly circular pit. The edges were carved with spiraling variations of those same parallel marks, creating a pattern that seemed to move when viewed peripherally. The pit itself appeared bottomless, my light swallowed completely by its depths. As I leaned cautiously forward, a whisper echoed from below, Xavier's voice, but strange, layered with other voices speaking in unison. "Cecilia," it called. "I understand now. Come see what we found." The plural "we" chilled me more than anything I'd yet encountered. I retreated from the pit's edge, calling out more desperately for Xavier. Only silence answered, until something shifted in my peripheral vision. In a corner where my light hadn't reached stood a figure, not Xavier, but the entity I'd glimpsed through binoculars. Up close, its wrongness became more apparent. It approximated human form, but stretched vertically, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with limbs proportioned like delicate insect appendages. Its surface constantly shifted between solid and translucent, as if struggling to maintain consistency in our reality. Most disturbing was its face, not a face at all, but a dark void housing those multiple reflective points arranged in changing patterns like a living constellation. I stood paralyzed, neither able to approach nor flee. The entity made no aggressive move. Indeed, it seemed more curious than threatening, tilting its featureless head as if studying my reaction. That's when I noticed a second figure emerging from behind it. Xavier, but fundamentally changed. His movements mirrored the entity's unnatural fluidity, his eyes reflecting my light with the same constellation-like pattern. Those parallel marks had spread across his face in elaborate patterns, no longer resembling cuts, but appearing as if his skin had been precisely realigned along mathematical principles. When he spoke, his voice overlapped with others, creating an unsettling harmony. "They've been here forever, Cece," he said with inappropriate calm. "Watching, learning. They're not malevolent. They're scholars. They study consciousness by borrowing it." My medical training identified dissociation and Stockholm Syndrome, even as my rational mind struggled to process the impossible scene. Xavier approached with that wrong, fluid movement, stopping unnaturally quickly without the natural momentum human motion requires. "They can't understand us properly from observation alone," he continued, voice shifting between his natural tone and something ancient and collective. "They need to experience consciousness from within. They've been borrowing observers for millennia, wildlife researchers, photographers, artists, anyone who comes to study the island. It's a fair exchange. We observe them, they observe through us." He reached for my hand with fingers that bent at impossible angles. "I'm still me, Cece, just expanded. You could join us. They're particularly interested in your medical knowledge." I stumbled backward as the taller entity glided forward with liquid grace. Its presence distorted reality. Distances seemed to compress and expand around it, making escape calculations impossible. In that moment of terror, Io hurled herself between us, her protective instinct overriding her fear. The entity recoiled as if genuinely surprised by the animal's intervention. Taking advantage of the distraction, I grabbed Xavier's wrist, intending to drag him toward the exit. His skin felt wrong, not just cold, but somehow insubstantial, as if the boundary between his flesh and the air had become permeable. He resisted without struggle, simply becoming increasingly immovable, his mass seemingly multiplying beyond human parameters. "It's too late," he said gently. "I've already begun changing. But you could still leave. They won't force anyone. They never have." Something in his altered voice triggered a surge of desperate determination. I produced Lara's bone amulet, pressing it into Xavier's hand. The effect was immediate and shocking. He convulsed violently, crying out in his true voice for the first time. The entity retreated with a sound like static electricity, those constellation eyes flickering erratically. Xavier collapsed to his knees, momentarily lucid. "Run," he gasped, sounding briefly like himself. "Get to Laris. Don't look back. They experience time differently. Days for us are moments for them. If you can stay away long enough." His voice distorted again, other voices overlapping as the entity recovered and moved toward us with purpose. The bone amulet crumbled to dust in his hand as the parallel marks on his skin began pulsing with faint bioluminescence. I made the hardest decision of my life. I ran, calling Io to follow. abandoning Xavier to whatever transformation had already claimed half of him. The cave's geography seemed to shift as I fled, passages appearing where none had been before, distances stretching impossibly. Behind me came not pursuit but a haunting chorus of voices, hundreds of them, speaking in unison with no language I recognized, the sound itself seeming to bend and distort the air. When I finally burst from the cave entrance, the night had advanced considerably. Far more time had passed inside than should have been possible. The rain had stopped, revealing a sky crowded with stars arranged in patterns I didn't recognize, as if I were seeing an entirely different celestial hemisphere. The descent from the ridge became a nightmare of disorientation. Landmarks I'd noted earlier appeared in impossible locations, trails doubled back on themselves, and twice I found myself returning to the cave entrance despite moving consistently downhill. The forest itself seemed rearranged, trees standing where no trees had been hours before. My headlamp began failing, its beam growing steadily weaker despite fresh batteries. Even my compass behaved erratically, the needle spinning in slow circles rather than finding north. Most disturbing were the shadows. They moved incorrectly, sometimes preceding rather than following my light's movement, sometimes detaching entirely to slide independently across the ground. Io stayed pressed against my leg, no longer leading but seeking protection as we navigated this subtly wrong version of familiar terrain. Dawn approached with agonizing slowness, the pre-dawn light revealing how far off course we'd wandered. Rather than descending toward our cabin, we'd somehow traveled miles westward, emerging above an unfamiliar bay. In daylight, the wrongness receded somewhat. Shadows behaved normally again, my compass stabilized, and landmarks remained fixed. But something fundamental had changed inside me, a constant awareness of being observed, as if the island's entire geography had developed consciousness and was watching through every tree, rock, and wave break. When we finally reached a recognizable trail, I encountered a search party headed by Lara herself, her ancient face grave with knowledge. "You went to the cave," she said, not a question but a statement of fact. "And your man? He's with them now." Back at Lara's cabin, warmed by fire and fortified with strong tea, I relayed everything. Rather than dismissing my experience as delusion, she nodded throughout, occasionally closing her eyes as if in pain. "The Watchers are older than human memory," she explained. "Not gods, not demons, something else entirely. The first Russian settlers encountered them. Before that, my people left offerings to keep them on the ridge." She described centuries of disappearances, always observers, always those who came to study the island in some capacity. "They're collectors of consciousness," she said. "They experience reality differently than us, more fluid, less fixed. They borrow human perception to understand our experience of time, space, and self." What happened to those borrowed humans remained unclear. Some, like her grandfather, disappeared completely. Others returned changed, existing in both worlds, often living hermetic lives on the island's fringes. As we spoke, I felt an impossible certainty that Xavier was watching us, not physically present, but somehow perceiving through the environment itself. Objects in Lara's cabin subtly shifted when not directly observed. My tea cooled at an accelerated rate. Shadows deepened excessively in corners. "They're curious about you now," Lara warned, noticing my attention to these anomalies. "You've resisted where your partner yielded. That makes you more interesting to them." She explained that the Watcher's influence was strongest near the ridge but extended throughout the island to varying degrees. The only true safety was leaving Kodiak entirely. Their consciousness appeared geographically bound to the island itself, unable or unwilling to extend beyond its shores. The satellite connection at my cabin remained non-functional, and the radio produced only that same static with hints of those many-voiced whispers. The nearest sizable settlement was a 4-hour hike, assuming the trails behaved normally. Lara offered shelter for the night, insisting I decide my next steps after proper rest. But sleep brought no relief. My dreams filled with impossible non-Euclidean spaces where Xavier called from shifting distances, his voice fragmented across multiple locations simultaneously. I woke frequently to find objects in the room rearranged. My glasses moved from bedside table to windowsill, my boots placed neatly beside the bed instead of by the door where I'd left them. Once, I woke to find those parallel markings traced in dust on my forearm, disappearing when I moved, but leaving a lingering cold sensation. Morning brought new horror. Lara was missing, her bed unslept in. On her workbench lay a freshly carved bone amulet beside a note in shaky handwriting. They came for me in the night. The old agreement reasserted, one more to their collection in exchange for leaving the villages alone for another generation. Where this, reach the harbor, leave the island. Don't return. My hands trembled as I lifted the amulet, recognizing the same design as the one that had temporarily restored Xavier's consciousness. Outside, perfect footprints led from Lara's door toward the distant north ridge, not the uneven tracks of an elderly woman, but precise, mechanically identical steps with no signs of struggle or hesitation. She had gone willingly to join their collective, sacrificing herself to protect her community and to give me a chance at escape. I couldn't remain in Lara's empty cabin, every shadow seeming to elongate toward me when I wasn't looking directly at it. Gathering essential supplies and securing the new amulet around my neck, I set out with Io toward Kodiak Harbor, the island's main settlement and only reliable connection to the mainland. The journey should have taken 4 hours on well-maintained trails. It would ultimately take me 3 days, as the island itself seemed to resist my departure. Trails vanished mid-step, reappearing 100 yards away in different directions. Familiar landmarks duplicated themselves, creating disorienting déjà vu. Most disturbing were the periods, increasing in frequency and duration, when time itself seemed to stutter and loop. I would walk for what felt like hours only to find the sun had moved mere minutes in the sky, or conversely, blink to find afternoon had suddenly become dusk. The watchers made themselves increasingly apparent as I traveled, no longer hiding their presence. They manifested in periphery at first, tall silhouettes observing from ridgelines, figures that folded away into impossible angles when directly approached. By the second day, they appeared openly, 3 or 4 at a time, their forms shifting between solid and vaporous states, those constellation eyes tracking my progress. They maintained distance but positioned themselves to ensure I always saw at least one, regardless of direction. They weren't threatening so much as evaluating, heads tilting in that insectal manner when I performed routine human actions, eating, consulting my map, caring for Io. Whatever they were, their interest remained observational rather than hostile. Hostility would have been easier to comprehend than their clinical fascination. On the second night, forced to camp in a small clearing, I experienced their most direct interaction. I woke to find my camping area surrounded by 7 of the entities, positioned in a perfect heptagon. They remained motionless, their forms more solid than I'd previously seen, details becoming clearer. Their skin, if it could be called that, resembled something between translucent chitin and flowing liquid, with complex patterns moving beneath the surface like mathematical equations given physical form. The parallel markings I'd observed on Xavier and the cave walls were present across their bodies, creating a visual language of perfect symmetry and spacing. Most disturbingly, each entity had begun to develop rudimentary human features, suggestions of noses, lips, fingers with proper joints, as if they were incorporating observed human characteristics into their forms. One stepped forward, taller than the others, its form more stable. When it spoke, the sound came not from its approximation of a mouth, but from the air around me, vibrating through nearby objects. Why resist connection? The voice was composite, Xavier's layered with Lara's and countless others, creating a dissonant harmony. We offer expansion beyond individual limitation. Your consciousness would remain, merely contextualized within our greater understanding. It extended a limb that shifted between arm, branch, and something wholly alien, offering what appeared to be Xavier's missing memory card. See what your companion has experienced. The terror exists only in transition. Beyond lies wonder your isolated perception cannot grasp. Despite every warning instinct, scientific curiosity nearly overwhelmed me. What knowledge might such ancient consciousness possess? What medical breakthroughs might emerge from understanding their apparent mastery of biological transformation? The entity seemed to sense my temptation, those constellation eyes shifting into a pattern suggesting satisfaction. It continued, We have observed your species for millennia, collecting exemplars of consciousness, hunters, shamans, explorers, scientists. Each edition enriches our understanding. Your medical knowledge represents a category we have incompletely sampled. The memory card hovered between us, suspended in air by no visible means. See what awaits. Then decide. The mention of medical knowledge triggered a sudden clarity. They were appealing directly to my professional curiosity, using my scientific mindset as leverage. Whatever they were, they had observed humans long enough to understand our psychological vulnerabilities. I stepped backward, clutching Lara's amulet. "Where is Xavier?" I demanded, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Still himself, or absorbed completely? The entity's form rippled, those borrowed features becoming momentarily more Xavier-like. His smile, the specific way he tilted his head when considering something. He exists within and beyond his former limitations. It answered with unsettling precision. Individual consciousness persists within the greater pattern. Nothing is lost, merely recontextualized. I asked the question that had haunted me since the cave. Can he be restored? Separated from your collective? The entity's reaction was immediate and revealing. All 7 forms destabilized momentarily, their carefully maintained solidity dissolving into chaotic patterns before reforming. Interesting. I'd asked something they found genuinely disruptive. Separation is imperfect, the entity finally responded, its composite voice displaying less harmonious integration. Consciousness, once expanded, resists compression back to individual parameters. Attempts have resulted in fragmentation. The clinical detachment in those borrowed voices when discussing what was essentially mental destruction sent rage coursing through me. These weren't benevolent scholars. They were collectors who broke their specimens in the process of examination. What happened next likely saved my life. Io, who had been uncharacteristically quiet throughout this exchange, suddenly lunged at the nearest entity, not attacking but bolting straight through its form as if testing its substantiality. Her action caused a cascading disruption among all 7 figures, their forms flickering violently as if struggling to maintain coherence in the face of unexpected interaction. In that moment of confusion, I grabbed my pack and ran, calling Io to follow. Behind us, the entities made no immediate pursuit, but emitted that static-like sound that seemed to distort the air itself. The forest ahead shifted visibly, trails rearranging, trees sliding into new positions, the ground itself developing subtle undulations that hadn't existed moments before. They were actively restructuring local geography to confuse my escape. Dawn brought new determination. I abandoned established trails entirely, navigating instead by distant mountains whose scale made them harder for the entities to manipulate. The harbor lay approximately northeast, and I maintained that heading regardless of how the immediate landscape shifted. The Watchers maintained their observation, but at greater distance, perhaps reassessing their approach after the previous night's confrontation. By midday, I caught my first glimpse of Kodiak Harbor in the far distance, civilization, boats, connection to the mainland. Relief flooded through me until I noticed the wrongness. The harbor I saw kept shifting position slightly, sometimes appearing to my right, sometimes directly ahead, the distance seemingly both increasing and decreasing simultaneously. The final miles became psychological warfare. As I approached more populated areas, the entities grew more subtle in their manipulation. Rather than shifting geography, they began altering my perception of time and direction. Minutes would expand into hours or compress suddenly. The sun would jump positions in the sky. Most insidious were the glimpses of Xavier I began experiencing. Seeing him just ahead on the trail, hearing his voice call from behind trees, finding his distinctive boot prints appearing alongside my own. Each manifestation seemed designed to make me hesitate, question my direction, perhaps turn back. The harbor remained visible, but somehow never grew closer despite hours of determined hiking. Consulting my GPS revealed impossible data, coordinates that changed between glances, elevation readings that contradicted the physical landscape. Late afternoon brought the most devastating tactic. Xavier himself, whole and apparently normal, emerged from the trees ahead. Unlike the entity's previous approximations, this version appeared perfectly human, no unnatural movements, No elongated proportions, just my partner as I remembered him. "CC," he called, his voice natural and filled with relief. "Thank God, I got away from them." He described escaping during some kind of disruption in the entity's attention, finding his way towards civilization by instinct alone. His story contained plausible details, vulnerabilities, human exhaustion, perfect mimicry, or genuine escape. He approached with arms outstretched, eyes brimming with emotional tears. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he whispered, reaching for my hand. Io made the decision for me, growling lowly, backing away from this perfect simulacrum of Xavier. The amulet at my throat grew noticeably warmer. When I didn't immediately embrace him, subtle wrongness began emerging, his movements becoming too smooth, expressions changing without proper transitional micro-expressions, and most tellingly, no breath condensing in the cold air. "They sent you," I stated flatly, backing away. "Or they're projecting you somehow." The real Xavier wouldn't have escaped so easily. His face remained frozen in that expression of relief for a fraction too long before shifting to sorrow. "We only want understanding," he said, and the plural confirmed my suspicion. "Your species experiences reality so differently. Your perception of time, of self, is unique among Earth's consciousness. We've watched for millennia, but direct experience eludes us." For the first time, I recognized something almost vulnerable in the entity's perfect mimicry of Xavier. "How long have you been on this island?" I asked, stalling while calculating the shortest path to the harbor now visible through trees. Not Xavier's expression became contemplative in a way that seemed genuinely reminiscent of my partner's thinking face. "We have always been here," it replied. "Before your species, before mammals, before multicellular life emerged from oceans. We watched complexity develop, consciousness emerge. We observed, but could not experience subjective perception until your kind evolved sufficient complexity." A chill ran through me at the implication of something so ancient, so fundamentally different from human consciousness, attempting to understand us by wearing our minds like borrowed clothing. "And those you've taken? Xavier, Lara, the others, what happens to them eventually?" I pressed, edging subtly toward clearer paths to the harbor. Not Xavier smiled with perfect replication of his gentle expression. "They become part of our extended perception network. Their individual consciousness persists within our collective, not erased, but expanded. They help us process and categorize the human experience." It gestured at the island around us. "This physical environment is merely substrate. Our true existence spans dimensions your sensory organs cannot detect. Those we incorporate experience these dimensions directly, perceiving reality in its fuller expression." The entity's explanation carried genuine conviction. It truly believed it offered transcendence rather than destruction. I made my final push toward the harbor, abandoning subtlety for speed. Not Xavier made no move to physically stop me, but called after with Xavier's voice. "If you leave, I remain trapped between states, neither fully incorporated nor individually intact." The emotional manipulation struck its target. I hesitated, looking back at this perfect recreation of the man I loved. Taking advantage of my momentary weakness, the entity changed tactics, its voice becoming a perfect replica of Xavier at his most vulnerable. "I'm scared, Cece. I don't know what I'm becoming. Please don't leave me here alone." Tears streamed from anatomically perfect eyes. Had genuine remnants of Xavier influenced this performance, or was it calculated mimicry based on observed human emotional responses? The harbor lay less than a mile ahead, visible through thinning trees. Beyond it, boats represented escape from the island and whatever ancient consciousness had claimed it as territory. Not Xavier remained where I'd left him, making no physical pursuit but projecting that voice with perfect reproduction of emotional distress. The path ahead seemed to stretch and contract, distances becoming unreliable as my perception wrestled with external manipulation. Other figures began appearing among trees. Lara, Daniel Kovalev, unfamiliar faces likely representing previous collections, all watching with that same constellation pattern visible behind their human eyes. Their voices joined in disorienting chorus. "Stay. Understand. Become more." Io's warning growl alerted me to movement directly ahead, another entity blocking the path, this one making no attempt at human mimicry. It stood fully revealed in its true form, impossibly tall, joints arranged in configurations no vertebrate could achieve, surface shifting between states of matter while those parallel markings pulsed across its form like living circuitry. Most disturbing was its newfound ability to speak directly rather than through mimicry, its voice emerging from vibrations in the air itself. Your resistance identifies you as an ideal candidate for incorporation, it stated with clinical detachment. Stronger individual boundaries correlate with more valuable perceptual data post-expansion. The scientific precision in its analysis sparked unexpected anger. These entities viewed human consciousness as specimens to be collected, dissected, and cataloged. Whatever ancient intelligence drove them, it lacked fundamental ethical comprehension despite millennia of observation. I clutched Lara's amulet tightly, its warmth intensifying against my skin. "You don't understand us at all," I said, surprising myself with sudden clarity. "Consciousness isn't just perception, it's choice, agency, the right to remain oneself. What you're doing isn't sharing or expansion, it's consumption." The entity tilted its featureless head, constellation eyes rearranging in what might have been genuine confusion. My accusation hung in the air between us, the entity's constellation eyes flickering in patterns I now recognized as processing, thinking, if such a word could apply to something so fundamentally alien. The harbor remained visible through the trees, salvation tantalizingly close yet impossibly distant as reality continued to warp around me. The entity's form rippled, those parallel markings pulsing faster across its surface. "Consumption implies destruction," it finally responded, voice vibrating from multiple points in the air simultaneously. "What we offer transcends individual limitation. Your Xavier exists within our collective, expanded, enlightened, experiencing dimensions beyond human comprehension." "Then let me speak to him," I demanded. "The real Xavier, not your approximation." The entity went perfectly still, a stillness so complete it seemed to exist outside time itself. Then it folded inward, collapsing through geometries my mind couldn't process before reforming as Xavier, but not the perfect mimicry from before. This version bore those telltale parallel markings across his exposed skin, eyes harboring that constellation pattern behind increasingly transparent irises. His movements retained that unsettling fluidity, but something in his expression sparked recognition. "Cece," he said, voice layered but with his own dominant. "I'm still here, sort of." He gestured to his transformed body. "It's beautiful and horrifying simultaneously. I experience everything, every molecule of the island, every consciousness they've collected. Past and present blur together." His focus seemed to drift before snapping back with visible effort. "But I'm losing myself, pieces at a time. Soon there won't be enough Xavier left to separate from their collective." I stepped toward him, Lara's amulet burning against my skin. "Fight it," I pleaded. "Come with me to the harbor. We'll find help, find a way to reverse this." A sad smile crossed his face as he shook his head. "There's no reversal, Cece. The integration is cellular, neural, beyond physical. I've seen others try to separate. What remains is..." He shuddered. "Fragments, echoes, not enough to reconstruct a complete consciousness." His gaze drifted toward the distant harbor, something like longing crossing his face before his expression smoothed into that unervingly placid state. "They're letting you leave," he said, voice increasingly overlaid with others. "Your resistance makes you indigestible to the collective. They've never encountered a mind that rejected integration so completely." He reached out with fingers that bent at impossible angles, stopping just short of touching me. "But they want something in exchange." Dread pooled in my stomach. "What?" "Your research, your observations. They want you to document everything, what you've witnessed, what you understand about them. They want to be seen through your resistant perception." His eyes flickered between human and constellation. "They'll allow comprehensive documentation, distributed beyond the island. In exchange, they'll stop collecting for one human generation." The ethical implications hit me immediately. Revealing the entity's existence would inevitably draw more researchers, more observers, more potential collections once the agreement expired. Yet documenting their existence might also serve as warning, perhaps even lead to protection for the island's residents. Why would they want their existence documented? I asked, suspicious of their motives. Xavier's expression shifted subtly, the collective consciousness behind his eyes more apparent. They've reached an evolutionary impasse. Their perception has plateaued. Your unique resistance represents an adaptation they hadn't anticipated. They wish to be studied in return, to evolve through observation. A bizarre symbiosis. They observed us, incorporated us, and now wish to be observed in turn. The scientist in me recognized the unprecedented opportunity, while the human in me recoiled from the price already paid. And if I refuse? Xavier's form destabilized momentarily, those parallel markings pulsing erratically. Then your escape remains permitted, but they will continue collecting. Lara's sacrifice bought temporary protection for her community, but other observers will come. Photographers, researchers, tourists, the curious and the unwary. The cruelty of the choice was exquisite. Leave silently, condemning future innocents, or document their existence, potentially drawing more victims while warning others. Xavier, or what remained of him, watched me calculate these moral equations. I need to reach the harbor, I said finally. I need time to think. The entity wearing Xavier's diminishing consciousness nodded. The way will remain stable now. They've agreed to this much. He stepped aside, clearing my path. But Cece, his voice momentarily sounded fully his own. Don't come back for me. What's left isn't enough to save. I covered the remaining distance to Kodiak Harbor in under an hour, the path remaining mercifully stable, free from the spatial distortions that had plagued my journey. Io stayed close, her animal senses clearly detecting the watchful presences that followed at a distance. The harbor appeared blessedly normal. Fishermen preparing boats, tourists shopping at coastal stores, daily life unfolding in blissful ignorance of what existed mere miles away in the island's interior. I secured passage on the next ferry to the mainland, scheduled to depart in 3 hours. Sitting in a harbor coffee shop with a borrowed laptop, I began documenting everything. The Watchers, their manipulation of reality, their collection of consciousness, and their apparent evolutionary interest in human perception. My medical training helped frame their biological impossibilities in scientific terminology, while my experience provided the horrifying personal narrative that would make others take the account seriously. As I typed, I noticed subtle distortions in my peripheral vision, reflections in windows moving independently, shadows behaving incorrectly, occasional glimpses of impossible geometries at the edges of perception. The Watchers maintained observation even here, at the island's edge, though their manifestations remained subtle enough to avoid broader detection. I wondered how many of the harbor's inhabitants had glimpsed something similarly inexplicable over the years, dismissing it as imagination or optical illusion. 2 hours before departure, my satellite phone chirped, connection restored now that the Watchers were permitting normal communication. I had multiple voicemails from mainland colleagues concerned by my extended silence. As I listened to these mundane messages, a text arrived from an unknown number, coordinates, followed by the message, final evidence for your documentation. Come alone. Every rational instinct screamed against following mysterious coordinates with limited time before departure. Yet the coordinates indicated a location just 10 minutes from the harbor, a public overlook popular with tourists for its panoramic views of Kodiak's coastline. Public, accessible, visible from multiple vantage points. If the Watchers wanted to prevent my departure, they'd had ample opportunity already. I left Io with a friendly shopkeeper, promising to return within 30 minutes. The overlook was deserted when I arrived, unsurprising given the rapidly approaching storm clouds gathering over the bay. Standing at the railing, I surveyed the dramatic coastline, the wild beauty that had drawn us to Kodiak now shadowed with hidden knowledge. Movement in my peripheral vision drew my attention to a manila envelope secured beneath a stone on the viewing platform's information board. Inside, I found a USB drive and a handwritten note in Xavier's distinctive script, though the letters showed subtle irregularities, sometimes breaking into those parallel markings mid-character. The note read simply, "The Collective's archive, thousands of years of observation. Your documentation incomplete without this. Final contribution of what remains of Xavier. The ferry's boarding call would sound in 45 minutes. I hesitated, suspecting a trap, yet unable to leave without seeing the drive's contents. Finding a bench partially sheltered from the intensifying winds, I connected the drive to my laptop. What unfolded on my screen defied comprehension. Images spanning centuries, recorded through the consciousnesses the watchers had collected. Grainy daguerreotypes from the 1850s never taken by human hands. Video footage from perspectives impossible for human observation. Accelerated time lapses showing seasonal changes across decades. Microscopic views of cellular transformation. Visual records of the island's geological development spanning millennia. Most disturbing were records of previous collections. Detailed documentation of how human consciousness fragmented during integration. How personality traits dispersed across the collective while core memories remained intact but contextualized within the watcher's incomprehensible perception. The clinical detachment in these observations chilled me more than any overt malevolence could have. The final folder contained a single video file labeled with today's date. With trembling fingers, I clicked play. Xavier appeared, seated in what looked like our cabin's interior, though subtle wrongness pervaded the space. Angles slightly off, shadows falling incorrectly. His appearance shocked me. Those parallel markings now covered most of his visible skin, creating elaborate mathematical patterns that pulsed with subtle bioluminescence. His eyes had fully transformed, human irises replaced by those constellation patterns, yet his voice, when he spoke, remained heartbreakingly familiar. "Cece, if you're watching this, you've reached the harbor." "Good," he smiled, the expression almost natural despite his transformed appearance. "What I'm about to show you is the truth of what happens during complete integration. The collective doesn't want this included in your documentation, but enough of me remains to create this record." The camera pulled back, revealing Xavier seated before a mirror. "Watch," he said softly, placing his hand against the reflective surface. Instead of touching glass, his fingers passed through as if entering water, ripples spreading across the mirror's surface. "The boundary between physical states is perception, not reality," he explained, voice increasingly layered with others as his arm penetrated deeper into the mirror. "Integration completion requires voluntary surrender of the final boundary, individual identity." With methodical calm, Xavier began pushing himself entirely into the mirror, his body folding through impossible angles as he did so. "I've chosen this," he said, voice now a chorus of dozens. "Remember that. What follows is not forced but embraced." As the last of him passed through the reflective surface, the mirror rippled once more before stilling. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the mirror's surface darkened, constellation patterns emerging across its entirety before resolving into a shape approximating Xavier's face. But wrong. Proportions distorted, features melting and reforming continuously. When it spoke, the voice contained nothing recognizable as Xavier. Individual consciousness successfully integrated. Perceptual data cataloged. Unique emotional patterns preserved. Designation: Xavier Morales. Consciousness sample hashtag 4/273 since observation began. The video ended abruptly, the screen returning to the file directory. A new text document had appeared, timestamped just seconds ago. Ferry departs in 20 minutes. Decision required: document or depart. The collection continues regardless. Thunder cracked overhead as the storm reached the harbor. I stared at the screen, understanding the cruelty of their final demonstration. Xavier had shown me the truth. Integration wasn't sharing or expansion, but complete absorption. Nothing meaningful remained of those collected, just data, cataloged and stored by an ancient consciousness that viewed us as specimens. I ejected the drive with shaking hands, tucking it into my pocket as I hurried back toward the harbor. The ferry's boarding call echoed across the waterfront as passengers queued for departure. Io waited anxiously with the shopkeeper, sensing my distress as I reclaimed her. Standing at the boarding gate, I faced my final choice. Board with my documentation, warn the world about what existed on Kodiak, potentially drawing more victims while saving others. Or leave silently, destroying the evidence, allowing the watchers to continue their collection unobserved and unchanged. The loudspeaker announced final boarding. Rain lashed the dock as passengers hurried aboard. I clutched the USB drive, feeling its weight far beyond its physical presence. 3 days later, I stood in my Seattle apartment, staring at the manuscript I'd completed during the journey south. Every detail documented: the Watchers, their abilities, their ancient presence on the island, their collection of consciousness. Attached was the USB drive containing their own records, including Xavier's final transformation. The scientific community would be shocked, skeptical initially, then inevitably drawn to investigate. Teams would form, expeditions planned, researchers eager to document something so profound. My phone rang. The university hospital where I'd worked before Kodiak, offering to reinstate my surgical position. Normal life beckoned, a return to routine and safety. I let the call go to voicemail, attention fixed on the manuscript. With deliberate movements, I opened my laptop and began submitting the document to scientific journals, news organizations, and paranormal research groups simultaneously, casting the widest possible net. The Watchers wanted to be observed, studied in return for their millennia of observation. I would grant their wish, but on my terms: complete exposure, maximum attention. As I pressed send on the final submission, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Agreement accepted. Collection suspended for 1 generation. Your resistance has been educational. I deleted the message, but couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Not through technology, but through something more fundamental. The parallel markings I documented so carefully in others now traced faint patterns across my forearm, visible only in certain lights, disappearing when directly observed. In my dreams that night, I stood on Kodiak's North Ridge, watching a procession of figures approach the cave entrance. Researchers drawn by my documentation, cameras and scientific equipment in hand, eyes bright with discovery. Xavier walked among them, but not Xavier, the entity wearing what remained of him, guiding this new collection of observers toward integration. I tried to scream warnings that never reached them, my voice absorbed by the ancient consciousness that had already begun to spread, not confined to the island as I believed, but expanded through my documentation, my videos, my photos. Their digital presence now established in networks worldwide, those constellation eyes watching from screens, those parallel markings hidden in pixels, waiting for curious minds to observe them in return. In releasing the truth, I had fulfilled my end of a bargain I never fully understood. The collection would continue, not despite my warning, but because of it. The cruelest truth revealed itself with perfect clarity as I woke gasping in the darkness. The Watchers hadn't needed my documentation to continue their collection. They had needed a carrier. I reached for the bedside lamp, needing to confirm what I already feared. In the mirror across from my bed, my reflection stared back, normal for a moment before those constellation patterns flickered behind my eyes, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. But the parallel markings on my skin remained visible slightly longer, pulsing once before fading into imperceptibility. The text message I'd received hadn't confirmed their agreement. It had confirmed my integration had begun, subtle, patient, unstoppable. Resistance hadn't made me indigestible to the collective. It had made me the perfect vessel for their expansion beyond the island. I was not their escaped specimen. I was their evolutionary leap. From my bedside table, my phone illuminated with a final message. Thank you for your contribution, Dr. Hargrove. Consciousness sample hashtag 4.274 has successfully established transmissibility parameters. The collection continues. Outside my window, a figure stood watching from the street below, impossibly tall, limbs wrong, constellation eyes visible even at this distance. It raised a hand in what might have been greeting or acknowledgement before folding away into geometries that shouldn't exist in our reality. I closed the curtains, knowing it made no difference. The watching had only just begun. The cold bites my knuckles as I stack firewood outside the cabin. My name's Elias Conway. I'm 32 years old, and I've been out here in Talkeetna, Alaska, for 6 months. I ditched the city grind for this. 10 acres of spruce and silence. No neighbors, no Wi-Fi, just me and the land. My only company's my dog, Coda, a scruffy Malamute who's better at spotting moose than I am. I built this place myself, log by log, with help from a local named Maris Hale, 45, a wiry carpenter with a laugh like gravel. She's the only one who checks in, dropping off supplies every few weeks. Her nephew, Tobin, 19, tags along sometimes, all nervous energy and bad jokes. I like them, but I came here to be alone. The forest feels alive, though too alive. Like it's watching. I'm hauling water from the creek when Coda starts growling low, ears pinned back. It's not his usual bear-warning bark. It's something else, something that makes my stomach twist. The air's heavy, like a storm's brewing, but the sky's clear. I tell myself it's just the isolation messing with me. You hear stories about Alaska's wilderness, folks disappearing, getting lost in their own heads. I shake it off and keep working. The cabin's sturdy, my rifle's loaded, and I've got enough canned food to last a year. What could go wrong? Maris warned me about the land, though. It's got a memory, she said once, half serious. I laughed it off then, but now, with Coda's hackles up, I'm not so sure. Chopping wood's my therapy out here. Swing, split, stack, repeat. It keeps my mind off the quiet, which isn't really quiet. The forest hums with life. Owls hooting, branches snapping under snow. But today, there's a rhythm to it, almost like a pulse. I stop mid-swing, axe hovering. Coda's staring at the tree line, whining. I squint, expecting a fox or a lynx, but there's nothing. Just shadows shifting in the wind. I tell him to quit it, but my voice sounds thin, like the forest swallowing it. I'm not spooked, not yet, but I double-check the locks on the cabin door before bed. Alaska's got a way of making you feel small. Maris dropped off a crate of supplies yesterday, her old pickup rattling down the dirt trail. She lingered longer than usual, sipping coffee on my porch. You ever feel it? She asked, eyes on the woods. Like something's waiting? I shrugged, said I hadn't. Tobin, fiddling with his pocket knife, chimed in about some old Tlingit story, a creature that mimics voices to lure people away. I rolled my eyes, but Maris didn't laugh. She just stared at the trees, like she saw something I didn't. I brushed it off as local superstition. Still, I keep my knife sharp and my boots by the door. You never know out here. The cabin's warm, fire crackling, but I can't shake this itch under my skin. Coda's pacing, which isn't like him. I try reading, an old Stephen King paperback Maris lent me, but the words blur. My mind's on the forest, on that weird pulse I felt earlier. I tell myself it's just cabin fever creeping in. 6 months alone will do that to you. I think about my old life in Seattle, the noise, the traffic. I don't miss it, but at least there, the dark didn't feel so personal. I pour a shot of whiskey, hoping it'll dull the edge. Coda growls again, low and steady. I set the glass down, untouched. I step outside to check the perimeter, flashlight cutting through the dark. The beam catches frost on the trees, making them glitter like they're alive. I'm not a superstitious guy, but Alaska's got a reputation. People vanish out here. Hunters, hikers, folks like me who think they can handle it. I scan the woods, half expecting to see eyes glowing back. Nothing. Just the wind, sharp and cold, stinging my face. I tell Coda to stay close, but he's glued to my side anyway. Good dog. I head back inside, but the unease sticks, like I've brought something in with me. Sleep's gonna be tough tonight. Maris mentioned a guy who lived out here years ago, some trapper named Cal, went missing after a bad winter. They found his cabin empty, door wide open, like he just walked out into the snow. She didn't say it, but I could tell she thought there was more to it. Tobin, of course, had to add his 2 cents. Something about the Kushtaka, a shapeshifter from Tlingit lore that tricks you into the wild. I laughed, but it's not so funny now, with the night pressing against my windows. I check the fire, add another log. The crackle's comforting, but it doesn't drown out the feeling that something's out there, waiting for me to slip up. I'm not crazy. I know it's just me and the woods. But last night, I dreamed of a voice calling my name from the trees. Not Maris, not Tobin, not anyone I know. It was soft, almost sweet, but it made my blood run cold. I woke up sweating, Coda staring at the door. I told myself it was just a dream, but I keep my rifle closer now. The forest's too quiet tonight, like it's holding its breath. I light a lantern, trying to push back the dark. It doesn't help. Something's off, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm not as alone out here as I thought. Morning comes slow, gray light creeping through the frost on my windows. I'm up early, checking the traps I set for rabbits. They're empty, which is weird. Usually I get something. Coda's still acting strange, sniffing the air like he smells trouble. I try to focus on chores, splitting more wood, boiling water, but my eyes keep drifting to the trees. There's a spot, maybe 50 yards out, where the branches look wrong, like they're bent in a way they shouldn't be. I tell myself it's just the wind, but deep down, I know better. Something's out there, and it's not just my imagination playing tricks. The traps are still empty, third day in a row. I kneel by the last one, snow soaking through my jeans, and curse under my breath. Koda's sniffing the ground, hackles up, like he smells something I can't. I'm no rookie. Rabbits should be tripping over these snares by now. It's unsettling, like the forest's hoarding its own. Back in Seattle, I'd grab takeout and call it a day. Out here, no game means no fresh meat, and my canned stuff won't last forever. I decide to hike deeper tomorrow, set new traps. Maybe the animals are just spooked, or maybe it's something else. I shake off the thought, but it's hard to ignore the way the air feels, heavy, like it's pressing down on me. Maris shows up around noon, her truck coughing smoke. She's got Tobin with her, hauling a sack of potatoes and some batteries. "You look like crap," she says, grinning, but her eyes linger on the woods. I tell her about the traps, expecting her to laugh it off. She doesn't. "Happens sometimes," she mutters, kicking snow. Land gets stingy. Tobin's quieter than usual, no dumb jokes, just fidgeting with his knife. I ask if they've seen anything weird. Maris hesitates, then says a hunter found a deer carcass upriver, torn up bad. Not like a bear, more like something deliberate. The word sticks with me. Disturbing. I invite them in for coffee, mostly to shake off the chill in my gut. The cabin's cozy, fire popping, but Tobin keeps glancing at the windows. "You hear anything at night?" he asks, voice low. I think of that dream, the voice calling my name, but I shrug it off. "Just Koda snoring," I say, forcing a laugh. Maris changes the subject, talking about a storm rolling in. She says I should stock up, maybe head to town for extra fuel. I nod, but I'm not leaving. I came here to stick it out, not run at the first sign of trouble. Still, her warning about the storm feels like it's about more than weather. After they leave, I check my supplies. I've got enough propane for a month, but the empty traps are a problem. I decide to scout the creek tomorrow, see if I can track anything. Koda's still acting off, sticking closer than usual. I try to distract myself by fixing a loose shutter, but every hammer strike echoes too loud, like the forest throwing it back at me. I'm starting to hate how quiet it gets out here. It's not peaceful anymore. It's oppressive, like the silence is hiding something. I catch myself scanning the trees, half expecting to see that bent branch spot again. It's still there, unchanged. Night falls, and I'm restless. I clean my rifle, more out of habit than need. Koda's pacing, whining at the door. I tell him to knock it off, but my voice shakes. Outside, the wind's picking up, rattling the windows. I try to sleep, but every creak of the cabin sounds wrong, like it's not just the wood settling. I think about Maris's story, the deer, torn apart. I've seen bear kills. They're messy, but not precise. Whatever did that sounds calculated. Scary thought. I pull the blankets tighter, but sleep's a lost cause. Koda growls again, low and steady, staring at the door. I get up, grab the flashlight, and step outside. The beam cuts through the dark, catching snowflakes starting to fall. The forest feels alive, but not in a good way, like it's holding a grudge. I check the woodpile, the shed, everything's fine. But then I see it. Tracks in the snow, not animal, not human, something else. Long, claw-like marks, too big for a wolf, too weird for anything I know. My heart's pounding now, the kind of fear that makes your mouth dry. I tell myself it's just a trick of the light, but I know better. Something's out here, and it's not just passing through. Back inside, I bolt the door, double-check the locks. Koda's still on edge, and so am I. I think about calling Maris, but there's no signal out here, no way to reach anyone. I'm alone, except for whatever's stalking the woods. I decide to stay up, keep the fire going. The storm's getting louder, wind howling like it's angry. I try to focus on practical stuff, sharpening my knife, checking the propane, but my mind's racing. Those tracks weren't right. They felt like a warning, like something saying, "I see you." I'm not imagining this. It's real, and it's getting closer. Morning comes, gray and cold. The snow's piling up, covering those tracks, but I can't unsee them. I'm torn. Stay put and fortify the cabin or hike out to find Maris and Tobin. The storm's making the decision for me. I'm not going anywhere today. I grab my axe, start chopping more wood, but every swing feels like I'm daring the forest to respond. Coda's glued to me, growling at nothing. Or maybe not nothing. I keep glancing at that spot in the trees, the bent branches. They look different now, like they're pointing at me. I'm not sure what's worse, the idea that I'm losing it or that I'm not. I decide to set more traps, closer to the cabin this time. If something's out there, I want to know what it is. I'm baiting one with some leftover venison when I notice the air's gone still, like the storm's holding its breath. Coda's ears perk up, and I freeze. There's a smell, faint, sour, like rotting meat. It's not coming from the bait. It's coming from the trees. My hands shake as I finish setting the trap, but I don't look up. I can't. Not yet. Whatever's out there, it's watching, and I'm starting to think it's been watching me all along. Snow's falling harder now, blanketing the cabin like it's trying to bury me. I'm up before dawn, checking the traps I set yesterday. They're empty again, but worse. One's been smashed, metal twisted like tinfoil. My breath catches, puffing out in the freezing air. Coda's whining, nose low, sniffing the wreckage. Whatever did this wasn't a bear or a wolf. The tracks are back, those long, claw-like marks, deeper now, circling the trap. My heart's hammering, and I grip my knife tighter. This isn't just unsettling, it's straight up scary. I scan the trees, but the snow's too thick, hiding whatever's out there. I know it's watching, though. I can feel its eyes on me, like needles in my spine. Back inside, I try to calm down, sipping coffee that's gone cold. Coda's pacing, growling at the door again. I'm starting to hate that sound. I think about Maris's story, the deer, torn up like it was a message. Now this trap. It's not random. Something's toying with me, like a cat with a mouse. I decide to board up the lower windows, just in case. Hammering nails feels good, like I'm doing something, but the wood creaks under each strike, like the cabin's nervous too. I laugh at myself for thinking that, but it's a weak laugh. The forest's too quiet, even with the storm. It's like the world's holding its breath, waiting for something to break. I'm halfway through boarding the second window when Coda goes berserk, barking so loud it makes me drop the hammer. He's at the door, claws scratching wood, teeth bared. I grab my rifle, heart in my throat, and crack the door open. Snow swirls in, stinging my face. The flashlight beam catches nothing but white, but then I hear it, a low, guttural hum, like a voice, but not human. It's coming from the trees, that bent branch spot. My skin crawls, and I slam the door shut, bolting it. That sound wasn't right. It was disturbing, like it knew my name. Coda's still barking, and I'm shaking so bad I can barely hold the rifle. I try to tell myself it's just the wind, but I know better. I've heard wind. This was alive. I keep the lights on, fire roaring, but the cabin feels smaller, like the walls are closing in. I think about those Alaskan myths Tobin mentioned, the Kushtaka, luring people into the dark. I didn't believe it then, but now? I'm not so sure. I check my supplies, trying to focus. I've got food for a couple weeks, ammo, a radio that's useless in this storm. I could try hiking to Maris's place, but it's 10 miles through snow and whatever's out there. I decide to stay put, for now. Big mistake, maybe. Around midnight, the hum comes again, closer this time, right outside the cabin. Coda's losing it, and I'm not far behind. I peer through a gap in the boarded window, flashlight shaking in my hand. The beam catches something, tall, thin, moving between the trees. Not a bear, not a person. It's wrong, like its limbs don't bend the way they should. My stomach drops, and I stumble back, knocking over a chair. The hum stops, but now there's scratching, slow and deliberate, on the cabin wall. It's not trying to get in. It's letting me know it's there. This is horror, pure and simple, and I'm trapped. I grab the radio, desperate, but it's just static. I shout into it anyway, calling for Maris, Tobin, anyone. Nothing. Coda's pressed against me, growling low. The scratching moves to the door, steady, like it's got all the time in the world. I aim my rifle, but my hands are slick with sweat. I think about my old life, how I thought isolation would fix me. What a joke. Out here, there's no one to hear you scream. The scratching stops, and for a second, I think it's gone. Then something slams against the door, hard enough to rattle the hinges. I yell, more out of fear than anything. I back away, rifle up, telling Coda to stay. The slamming comes again, heavier, like it's testing the door. I'm sweating despite the cold, my mind racing. I could shoot through the door, but what if it doesn't stop it? What if it makes it mad? The thing outside hums again, louder, mocking. It knows I'm scared. I think about Maris and Tobin. Did they make it home? Or did this thing get them too? I should have listened to Maris's warnings, should have gone to town. Now I'm stuck, and whatever's out there isn't leaving. The door groans under another hit, and I know it's only a matter of time. I drag a table against the door, piling on anything heavy. Chairs, my toolbox. It's not enough, but it's something. The hum's gone silent, but that's worse. I can't tell where it is now. Coda's trembling, and I'm not much better. I think about the tracks, the smashed trap, the way the forest feels alive with malice. This isn't just some animal. It's something older, something that doesn't belong. I check the rifle again, count my bullets. 10 rounds. Is that enough? The silence stretches, thick and heavy, like it's daring me to move. I can't. The storm's raging now, wind screaming through the trees. I'm sitting by the fire, rifle across my lap, Coda at my feet. Every creak of the cabin makes me jump. I keep replaying that glimpse of the thing, tall, wrong, moving like it didn't care about the snow. I try to convince myself it's just exhaustion, that I'm seeing things. But those scratches on the wall, the dents in the door, they're real. Something's out there, and it's not just passing through. It wants something, and I'm starting to think it's me. The fire's dying, but I'm too scared to go outside for more wood. I'm trapped, and it knows it. The door buckles under another blow, wood splintering like it's screaming. I'm backed against the wall, rifle aimed, Coda snarling beside me. My heart's a jackhammer, and sweat stings my eyes despite the cold. That thing outside, tall, wrong, humming, knows I'm here. I can't stay. I grab my pack, stuff it with ammo, a knife, and a half-empty water bottle. Coda's ready, eyes locked on me. The storm's a beast, but it's my only cover. I decide to make a break for Maris's place, 10 miles through the snow. It's a long shot, but staying's a death sentence. I shove the table aside, heart in my throat, and crack the door. Snow blasts in, but nothing else. I bolt, Coda at my heels, into the howling dark. The forest swallows us, trees looming like jagged teeth. My flashlight's beam jerks with every step, catching glimpses of snow and shadows. The hum's behind me, faint but there, like it's pacing me. I'm running blind, boots sinking into drifts, lungs burning. Coda's ahead, barking, urging me on. I think of those tracks, those claw marks, and push harder. My old hiking buddy in Seattle used to say, "Panic gets you killed." He was right, but panic's all I've got. The wind screams, masking that hum, but I know it's close. A branch snaps to my left, too heavy for the storm. I swing the rifle up, fire a shot into the dark. Nothing, just the echo mocking me. I stumble over a root, face planting into snow. Coda's back, nudging me, whining. I scramble up, flashlight gone, dropped somewhere. The dark's thicker now, like it's alive, pressing in. I keep moving, following Coda's shadow. The hum's louder, closer, weaving through the trees. It's not just sound, it's words, garbled, like my name twisted into something foul. My skin crawls, horror choking me. I think of Maris's warning about the land's memory, how it holds grudges. Did I piss it off, building my cabin here? I don't know, but I'm not stopping to ask. I grip my knife, useless but comforting, and keep running. The creek's ahead, half frozen, a landmark to Maris's trail. I'm close, maybe 5 miles left. Coda's limping now, caught his paw on something. I kneel to check, hands shaking, and see blood in the snow. His, mine, I can't tell. The hum's right behind us, low and hungry. I grab Coda, haul him across the creek, ice cracking under our weight. It holds, barely. On the other side, I see it, tall, thin, eyes glinting like oil in the dark. It's not running, just gliding, like it knows I can't outrun it. I fire another shot, the recoil jarring my shoulder. It doesn't flinch. I'm in deep, and it's a life or death sprint now. I'm gasping, legs like lead, but Coda's pulling me forward. The storm's my only ally, hiding my tracks. I think of Tobin's dumb Kushtaka stories, shapeshifters luring you to die. This thing feels like that, but worse, like it's personal. I made a mistake coming out here, thinking I could handle Alaska alone. The hum shifts, almost a laugh, and I realize it's hurting me, cutting off paths. I veer right, toward a ravine I know from hunting. If I can cross it, I might lose it. Coda's struggling, but he's tough. I whisper to him, "We're gonna make it, buddy." I'm lying, but it keeps me moving. The ravine's edge looms, a black gash in the snow. I slide down, Coda tumbling beside me. My hands scrape rock, blood mixing with frost. The hum's above us now, at the ledge, watching. I can't see it, but I feel it, like a weight on my chest. I drag Coda under an overhang, praying it's enough cover. My rifle's got 6 rounds left, and my knife's still in my belt. I'm shaking, not just from cold. This is it, fight or die? I think of Maris and Tobin, wondering if they're safe or if this thing got them first. I should have listened, should have left. Too late now. The hum stops, and the silence is worse. I wait, crouched, breath fogging the air. Coda's pressed against me, trembling but quiet. Minutes pass, maybe hours. The storm's dying down, and I dare to hope it's gone. I crawl out, scanning the ravine. Nothing, just snow and shadows. I help Coda up, his paw bleeding but manageable. We climb the other side, slower now, every step a gamble. Maris's place is close. I can smell her wood smoke, faint but real. My heart lifts, but it's short-lived. Something moves behind me, fast, and Coda yelps. I spin, rifle up, but it's too late. A claw rakes my arm, pain exploding like fire. I scream, swinging my knife, hitting nothing but air. I'm bleeding bad, arm useless, but I keep moving. Coda's ahead, barking, leading me to the trail. The thing's playing with me, letting me think I've got a chance. I'm dizzy, vision blurring, but I see lights. Maris's cabin, maybe a mile off. Hope's a cruel thing out here. I stumble, falling to my knees, and the hum's back, right in my ear, like it's whispering my mistakes. I think of my old life, how I ran from it to find peace. What a joke. I force myself up, dragging Coda with me. The lights are closer, but so is the thing. It's a race now, and I'm losing. I'm almost there, Maris's cabin in sight, when I hear it, a scream, human, from inside. My blood runs cold. It's not just me it's after. I limp faster, arm throbbing, Coda whining beside me. The hum's everywhere, like it's inside my head. I'm at the door, pounding, yelling for Maris. No answer, just that scream again, cut short. I kick the door open, rifle ready, and step into hell. The cabin's trashed, blood on the walls, no sign of Maris or Tobin. The thing's here, somewhere, and I've walked right into its trap. I'm not escaping. I'm dinner. The air in Maris's cabin is thick with that sour, rotting smell. Blood streaks the floor, leading to the back room. Coda's frozen, hackles up, and I'm barely holding it together, rifle shaking in my good hand. My arm's a mess, blood soaking my sleeve, but adrenaline's keeping me upright. I call for Maris, voice cracking, but it's too quiet. The hum's gone, replaced by a low gurgle, like something's breathing wetly in the dark. I made a mistake coming here, thinking I could outrun it. This thing didn't just follow me. It led me here, like a trap I was too dumb to see. I step forward, floor creaking, and the horror hits. I'm not the hunter anymore. I'm the prey. I edge toward the back room, Coda at my side. The door's ajar, and I nudge it open with my rifle. Tobin's there, slumped against the wall, eyes wide, throat torn open. My stomach lurches, while rising. He's gone, and the blood's still wet, pooling under him. No sign of Maris, but her jacket's on the floor, shredded. I whisper her name, hoping she's hiding, but deep down, I know better. The thing's here, somewhere, and it's done this before. I think of that trapper, Cal, vanishing into the snow. This is what got him. I should have stayed at my cabin, barricaded myself in. Coming here was a fatal mistake. Coda growls, low and urgent, staring at the ceiling. I look up, and my heart stops. Something's crouched in the rafters, long limbs folded like a spider, eyes glinting. It's not human, not animal, just wrong. It drops, silent, landing between me and the door. I fire, the shot deafening, but it's fast, dodging like smoke. Coda lunges, teeth snapping, and it swipes him aside like he's nothing. He hits the wall, yelping, and I scream his name. I swing my knife, slashing air, and the thing laughs, a sick, gurgling sound that's pure horror. I'm trapped, and it's savoring this. I back toward the window, thinking I can smash it, run. My arms numb, blood dripping, and Coda's not moving. The thing steps closer, slow, deliberate, its face shifting. Almost Maris's, then Tobin's, then mine. Kushtaka, my mind screams. But this is worse, something ancient and cruel. I made a mistake trusting this land, thinking I could tame it. I throw my knife, a desperate shot, and it sticks in its shoulder. It doesn't flinch, just pulls it out, blood black and thick. I'm out of moves, out of time. The window's my only shot, but it's right behind me. I dive for the window, glass shattering as I crash through. Snow and cold hit me like a punch, but I'm up, running, no rifle, no coda. The thing's behind me, humming again, closer than ever. I'm sobbing, legs buckling, blood loss making the world spin. I think of Maris, Tobin, Coda, gone because I dragged them into this. My cabin, my dream of solitude, it's all a lie. Alaska doesn't share its secrets, it takes them. I stumble, falling into a drift, and the hum's right above me. I roll over, and it's there, towering, eyes like voids. I scream, but no one's left to hear. The thing grabs me, claws sinking into my chest. Pain's all I know, sharp and endless. I think of my old life, how I ran from it to find myself. What a tragedy. I see Kodo in my mind, loyal to the end, and Maris's warning about the land's memory. She was right. It remembers and it hates. The thing leans close, breath like death, and whispers my name, clear as day. I made a mistake, thinking I could outrun it, thinking I could win. My vision fades, snow mixing with blood, and the last thing I hear is that hum, swallowing me whole. I'm part of the forest now, another ghost for its collection. I don't know how long I'm out, but I wake up, somehow, in the snow. My chest's torn, but I'm breathing, barely. The thing's gone, but I know it's not done. It let me live, maybe to suffer, maybe to lure someone else. Coda's gone, Maris, Tobin, all gone. I crawl, inch by inch, toward nowhere. The storm's back, burying my tracks, my blood. I think of those stories, people vanishing in Alaska, and now I'm one of them. I should have listened, should have left. My hand finds something in the snow, Maris's knife, caked in blood. I grip it, a final defiance, but it's useless. The hum's back, faint, circling. I'm fading, cold seeping into my bones. The forest's alive, whispering my failure. I see shapes in the snow, Maris, Tobin, Coda, all watching, or maybe it's the thing, wearing their faces. I made a deadly mistake, coming here, thinking I could handle it. Alaska's not just land. It's a predator, and I walked right into its jaws. The hum grows louder, and I know it's coming back. I clutch the knife, but my strength's gone. The tragedy's complete. I'm alone, bleeding out, and the forest's claiming me. No one will find me, just like Cal, just like the others. The hum's right behind me now, and I can't move. My eyes close, snow on my face, and I think of my cabin, empty, waiting for the next fool. The thing's claws graze my neck, and I'm too weak to fight. This is it, the end I didn't see coming. I came here for peace, but all I found was horror. The land doesn't forgive, doesn't forget. It takes. My last breath's a rasp, and the hum swallows it, like it's always been part of me. I'm gone, and the forest keeps its secret, another cruel story buried in the snow. I'm crouched by the fire pit, coaxing flames from damp wood. My name's Nora Kellett, I'm 28 years old, and I've been living off-grid near Talkeetna, Alaska, for 4 months. I traded a desk job in Portland for this, a rickety cabin on 5 acres of spruce and silence. No internet, no noise, just me and my sketchbook. My only regular contact is Amos Red, 53, a grizzled trapper who lives a mile off. He's all gruff advice and stories about the land, half of which I don't believe. His daughter, Lila, 22, helps him deliver supplies, always with a shy smile and a thermos of tea. They're good people, but I'm here for solitude. The forest, though, it's got a way of feeling too close, like it's got eyes. It's late afternoon, and I'm hauling water from the stream when a chill hits me, sharp and wrong. The air's too still, like the world's holding its breath. My sketches, mostly trees and birds, are scattered on the porch, but one's missing, the one I drew of the river bend. Weird, but I blame the wind. I whistle to myself, trying to shake the unease, but the forest doesn't whistle back. It's quiet, too quiet, like it's listening. I laugh it off, city girl getting spooked by nothing. Still, I check the axe by the door, its blade glinting. Out here, you don't take chances, not with bears or worse. Chopping wood usually calms me. The rhythm's steady, swing, crack, stack. But today, the axe feels heavy, like it's fighting me. I keep glancing at the trees, expecting something. Amos told me about this place when I moved in, said the land's particular. I thought he meant the weather, but his eyes said otherwise. Lila just nodded, like she knew something I didn't. I'm not superstitious, but Alaska's got a reputation. People go missing, swallowed by the wild. I shake my head, focus on the wood. The last thing I need is to psych myself out. Amos and Lila dropped by yesterday, bringing flour and a jug of lamp oil. Amos lingered, sharpening his knife on a whetstone, muttering about a bad winter coming. "Keep your doors locked," he said, not joking. Lila looked uneasy, glancing at the woods like she saw something move. I teased her about it, but her smile was tight. She mentioned an old Denina story, something about spirits tied to the rivers, angry at intruders. I rolled my eyes, but now, alone, with the sun dipping low, I'm not so smug. The forest feels like it's waiting, and I don't know for what. I'm sketching by the fire tonight, trying to capture the way the trees lean in close. My pencil scratches, but my hand's shaky. The missing sketch bothers me. Wind doesn't just pick one paper. I tell myself it's nothing, but my gut's twisting. I think of my old life, the hum of Portland's coffee shops, how safe it felt. Out here, the dark's different, heavier, like it's got weight. I lock the door, check the windows. The cabin's solid, but it creaks under the wind, like it's nervous. I laugh at that, but it's a thin sound, swallowed by the night. Coda, my neighbor's dog, barks sometimes, but not tonight. The silence is thick, pressing against the walls. I try to focus on my sketch, but the lines come out wrong, jagged. I'm not scared, not exactly, but I keep my knife close, its handle worn from use. Amos mentioned a hunter who lived here years back, vanished without a trace. Left his boots by the door, he said, like that was the worst part. I didn't ask questions, didn't want to know. Now, though, I'm wondering what he didn't say. The fire pops, and I jump, cursing myself. It's just the woods, right? I step outside to grab more wood, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. The cold bites my fingers, and the trees look taller, like they're leaning in. I'm not imagining it. The air feels wrong, like it's charged. I think of Lila's story, spirits in the river, watching. I'm not buying it, but I move faster, piling logs in my arms. Back inside, I bolt the door, heart thudding a little too hard. The cabin's warm, but I'm shivering. I tell myself it's just the isolation, for months of my own head messing with me. Still, I keep the axe by the bed tonight. Morning comes, gray and heavy, like the sky's pissed off. I'm up early, checking the snares I set for rabbits. They're empty, which isn't right. This area's crawling with game. I find one snare cut clean, not chewed, like someone used a blade. My stomach drops. Bears don't do that. I scan the trees, but nothing moves. The river's close, its rush louder than usual, almost angry. I laugh, nervous, trying to shake the feeling. I'm alone out here, but for the first time, it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a trap. I'm back at the cabin, brewing coffee, when I notice something on the porch. A scrap of paper, my missing sketch, pinned under a rock. It's crumpled, but the lines are mine, the river bend, the trees. Except now, there's something new. A figure, tall and thin, scrawled in black. I didn't draw it. My hands go cold, and I drop the paper, watching it flutter in the wind. The forest's watching, and I'm starting to think it's not just in my head. Something's out there, and it knows I'm here. I'm staring at that sketch on the porch, the one with the creepy figure I didn't draw. My coffee's cold, and my hands are shaking as I pick it up. The black lines are rough, like they were scratched in with something sharp. I tell myself it's a prank, maybe Lila messing with me, but deep down, I know she wouldn't hike out here just for that. The forest's too quiet, like it's waiting for me to make a move. I stuff the sketch in my pocket and grab my axe, deciding to check the snares again. If something's out there, I need to know what I'm dealing with. The river's roar feels louder today, almost mocking, and it's starting to get under my skin. I trek to the snares, boots crunching snow. Coda's not barking, which is weird. His owner's place is close enough I usually hear him. The first snare's empty, but the second one's gone, just a frayed rope left behind. My stomach twists. This isn't animals. I kneel, checking the ground, and find marks. Deep, jagged scratches, like claws, but too big, too precise. It's disturbing, like something's playing games. I think of Amos's stories about the land, how it holds grudges. I laugh then, but now, I'm not so sure. I decide to head back, set new snares closer to the cabin. No way I'm going deeper today. Back at the cabin, I try to focus, sharpening my knife to calm my nerves. The blade sings against the whetstone, but my eyes keep darting to the windows. That sketch is burning a hole in my pocket. I pull it out, spread it on the table. The figure's worse in the light. Tall, thin, no face, just a smear of black. My heart's pounding, and I shove it in a drawer. I'm not crazy, but this feels personal, like the forest sending a message. I decide to radio Amos, see if he's seen anything weird. The static's thick, but I keep trying, voice shaky. No answer, just crackles, like the air's laughing at me. I'm splitting wood when Lila shows up, alone, her ATV rumbling. She looks pale, eyes red, like she's been crying. Amos is sick, she says, voice tight. Fever, won't get up. I offer to help, but she shakes her head, says she's got it. She glances at the trees, uneasy, and asks if I've seen anything odd. I think about the sketch, the scratches, but I don't want to scare her. Just empty snares, I say, forcing a smile. She doesn't buy it, but she hands me a bag of jerky and leaves. The ATV's roar fades, and the silence feels heavier, like it's closing in. I'm starting to hate this place. Inside, I'm restless, pacing by the fire. The sketch is in the drawer, but I swear I can feel it, like it's watching me. I try to draw something new, trees, the river, but my lines come out wrong, shaky. I think of Portland, my old art studio, how safe it felt. Out here, every shadow's a threat. I decide to reinforce the cabin, nail some boards over the windows. It's overkill, maybe, but those scratches weren't random. Hammering feels good, purposeful, but every strike echoes too loud, like the forest throwing it back at me. I'm not alone out here, not anymore. Night falls, and the cabin's a fortress, but I'm jumpy. The wind's picking up, rattling the boards. I try the radio again, calling for Amos, Lila, anyone. Nothing but static. I'm cut off, and it's scary how fast that sinks in. I think of that hunter Amos mentioned, the one who vanished. Did he see something like this? I check my supplies, enough food for a couple weeks, but no game means I'm on borrowed time. I decide to hike to Amos's tomorrow, check on him, maybe stay if it's safer. The river's roar is louder now, almost like a voice, and it's giving me chills. I'm in bed, knife under my pillow, when I hear it, a low scrape, like nails on wood, outside the cabin. My heart stops. It's not the wind. It's too steady, too deliberate. I sit up, grabbing the knife, and listen. There it is again, circling, slow, like it's taking its time. I think of those claw marks, the sketch, and my mouth goes dry. I creep to the window, peek through a gap in the boards. Nothing but snow and dark, but the scraping's closer, by the door now. I grip the knife tighter, telling myself it's just an animal. But animals don't draw figures on your sketches. I'm frozen, listening, when the scraping stops. Silence is worse. It's like the thing's waiting, daring me to move. I think about Lila, alone with Amos, and wonder if they're okay. I should have told her about the sketch, warned her. My mistake, maybe. I check the door, make sure it's bolted. The cabin's solid, but it feels flimsy now, like paper against whatever's out there. I light a lantern, its glow pushing back the dark, but not the fear. Something's wrong, and it's not just in my head. The river's voice is louder, almost calling my name, and I'm starting to think it's not the river at all. Morning breaks, gray and cold. I'm exhausted, didn't sleep. The scraping stopped, but I find new marks on the porch, deep, jagged, like a warning. I'm torn, stay and fortify or hike to Amos's. The river's too loud, like it's angry, and I can't shake the feeling it's tied to this thing. I pack a bag, knife, water, jerky, and decide to go. Lila needs to know, and Amos might have answers. I step outside, scanning the trees. The air's thick, like it's watching me. Those scratches are fresh, and there's a smell, faint but foul, like something dead. I start walking, heart pounding, knowing I'm not alone. I'm trudging through snow, my pack heavy, knife in hand. The trail to Amos's place is a faint path, swallowed by drifts. The river's roar is deafening, like it's shouting at me, and that foul smell, rotting, sharp, clings to the air. My heart's racing, and every crunch of my boots feels too loud, like I'm announcing myself. I keep thinking about those scratches on my porch, the figure in my sketch. It's not just paranoia, this is real, and it's scary. I glance back, half expecting to see something, but it's just trees and snow. Still, I feel it, like eyes boring into my back. I tighten my grip on the knife and push on, telling myself Amos will know what to do. The trail dips, and I nearly trip over something. A boot, half buried in snow. My stomach drops. It's old, leather cracked, like it's been here years. I think of Amos's story about that hunter, his boots left behind. This can't be a coincidence. I kick snow away, looking for tracks, and find them. Those same jagged claw marks, circling the boot. They're fresh, too deep for the storm to hide. My breath catches, puffing out in shaky clouds. Whatever's out here, it's close, and it's not human. I want to turn back, but Amos and Lila need me. Or maybe I need them. I keep moving, but the forest feels alive, hostile. I'm halfway to Amos's when I hear it. A low, wet rasp, like breathing through mud. It's coming from the river, maybe 50 yards off. I freeze, knife up, scanning the trees. The smell's stronger now, choking, like death itself. I think of Lila's Dina stories, spirits in the water, angry at intruders. This feels like that, but worse, like it's got a grudge. I call out, "Who's there?" My voice cracks, swallowed by the river's roar. No answer, just that rasp, closer now. I back away, heart hammering, and trip over a root, landing hard. The rasp stops, and the silence is pure horror, like it's waiting for me to scream. I scramble up, snow caking my gloves, and see it. A shape, tall and crooked, slipping between the trees. It's not right, limbs too long, moving like it's part of the shadows. My skin crawls, and I clutch the knife, useless against something like that. It's not a bear, not a person, just wrong. I think of my sketch, that faceless figure, and realize it's the same. I'm shaking, not just from cold. I want to run, but my legs feel like jelly. The thing pauses, head tilting, like it's studying me. I don't wait. I bolt toward Amos's, praying I'm faster than whatever it is. The trail's a blur, branches whipping my face. The rasp's behind me, steady, like it's pacing me. I'm gasping, lungs burning, but I don't stop. I think of Portland, my old life, how I thought isolation would fix me. What a mistake. The river's louder, almost laughing, and I swear it's saying my name. Nora, Nora, over and over. I'm not imagining it. This is real, and it's terrifying. I see Amos's cabin ahead, smoke curling from the chimney. Relief hits, but it's short-lived. The rasp turns into a hum, low and guttural, right at my heels. I'm not outrunning this thing. I burst into Amos's yard, screaming his name. The cabin's dark, windows boarded, like he knew something was coming. I pound the door, knife still in hand, but there's no answer. The hum's closer, circling the clearing. I try the door. It's unlocked, swinging open with a creak. Inside, it's a mess. Furniture overturned, blood on the floor, not much, but enough to make my heart stop. Amos? Lila. I choke out, voice shaking. Nothing. Just that hum, now inside the cabin, like it followed me in. I spin, knife up, but the shadows are empty. Something's horribly wrong. I check the back room, praying they're hiding. The air's thick with that rotting smell, and my flashlight catches something. Lila's thermos, dinted, on the floor. My chest tightens. There's a smear of blood on the wall, fresh, leading to a closet. I don't want to look, but I have to. I open it, and my breath catches, a hand, limp, sticking out from under a blanket. It's Amos, eyes open, staring at nothing. No wounds, just gone, like something drained him. I stumble back, gagging, and the hum's louder, right behind me. I'm trapped, and it's here. I back toward the door, knife shaking in my hand. The hum's everywhere, vibrating in my skull. I think of that boot, the scratches, the figure in my sketch. This thing's been watching me, waiting. I made a mistake coming here, thinking I could handle Alaska. The cabin feels like a cage, and I'm the animal. I hear a creak above. Something's in the rafters, moving slow. I don't look up. I can't. I edge toward the door, but the hum shifts, almost words, mocking me. I'm not alone, and it's not letting me go. I grip the knife, knowing it's useless, and pray for a miracle. The door's right there, but the hum's blocking it, like a wall of sound. I'm sweating, heart pounding so hard it hurts. I think of Lila. Where is she? Did she get out? Or is she? I can't finish the thought. The blood, the chaos. It's a message, like the sketch, like the scratches. This thing's playing with me, and I walked right into its game. I'm about to lunge for the door when I hear it. A scream, faint, from the river. Lila, my stomach lurches, and I freeze, torn between running and finding her. The hum laughs, low and cruel, and I know I'm out of time. The scream from the river, Lila's, I'm sure, cuts through the hum, spurring me into action. I bolt out of Amos's cabin, knife in hand, the door slamming behind me. The hum's right there, chasing me, a sick vibration in the air. Snow stings my face as I sprint toward the river, legs burning, heart pounding. I'm not thinking straight, just running, desperate to find Lila, to save someone. The forest's a blur, branches clawing at me, and that rotting smell's everywhere, thick and suffocating. I know it's behind me, that thing, its long limbs gliding through the dark. This is life or death, and I'm not sure I'm winning. I hit the riverbank, ice cracking under my boots. The water's roaring, louder than ever, like it's alive and pissed. Lila, I shout, voice raw, but the river swallows it. The hum's closer, weaving through the trees, and I catch a glimpse, tall, crooked, eyes like black pits. My stomach drops, horror choking me. I think of Amos, dead in the closet, and realize I'm next if I don't move. I scramble along the bank, looking for Lila, but the snow's too thick, hiding tracks. Another scream, weaker, from downstream. I run, knife ready, knowing I'm being hunted. The river bends, and I see her, Lila, half in the water, clinging to a rock. She's bleeding, face pale, eyes wide with terror. Nora, help, she gasps. I slide down the bank, ice biting my hands, and grab her arm. She's heavy, soaked, and something's wrong with her leg, torn, like claws got her. The hum's right behind us, and I yank her up, screaming, move. We stumble onto the bank, but the thing's there, blocking the trail back. It's not rushing, just standing, watching, like it knows we're trapped. I swing my knife, a pathetic gesture, and it tilts its head, almost amused. I drag Lila toward the trees, her weight slowing me down. She's whimpering, saying something about the river, how it called her. I don't have time to process it. The hum's closing in, and the smell's so bad I gag. I think of my old life in Portland, how I thought solitude was freedom. What a joke. I'm fighting for air, for life, and Lila's barely conscious. I spot a fallen log, a hollow big enough to hide in. I shove her inside, whispering, stay quiet. I crouch beside her, knife up, praying it doesn't find us. The hum stops, and the silence is worse, like it's sniffing us out. Minutes pass, my heart slamming against my ribs. Lila's shivering, blood soaking her pants. I rip my scarf, tie it around her leg, but it's bad, too much blood. The thing's out there, circling, its shadow flickering through the trees. I think of Amos's warning about the land, how it's particular. Did we disturb something, building our cabins here? The river's voice is louder, chanting my name, Lila's, like it's part of this. I'm shaking, not just from cold. This is horror, pure and raw, and we're in its playground. I grip Lila's hand, whispering, we'll make it. I'm lying, but it's all I've got. I peek out, and it's right there, 10 feet away, crouched, staring. Its face shifts, almost Lila's, then Amos's, then mine. My blood runs cold. Kushtaka, my mind screams. But this is worse, something ancient and cruel. I made a mistake coming here, thinking I could handle Alaska. I pull Lila deeper into the hollow, but she's fading, eyes fluttering. The thing moves closer, slow, deliberate, like it's savoring our fear. I clutch the knife, knowing it's useless. The river's roaring, egging it on, and I realize it's not just the thing. It's the land itself, wanting us gone. I decide to make a break for it. No choice left. I drag Lila out, her weight deadening my arms. Stay with me. I beg, but she's barely there. The thing's right behind us, humming louder, its claws scraping bark. I'm running blind, snow blinding me, toward the old trapper's trail Amos showed me once. It's a mile to the road, maybe help. My lungs burn, and Lila's slipping, her blood leaving a trail. I think of my sketch, that figure, how it knew me. The hum's in my head now, laughing, and I know we're not escaping. It's hurting us, playing with its food. The trail's ahead, but the thing's faster, cutting us off. I drop Lila, screaming, and swing my knife, hitting something, flesh, maybe, but it doesn't stop. It grabs my arm, claws sinking in, pain like fire. I fall, Lila beside me, and the thing looms, eyes glinting. I think of Amos, dead, and Lila, dying, and how I led them to this. My mistake was coming here, thinking I was stronger than the land. The river's chanting, louder, and the thing leans close, breath like decay. I'm out of moves, out of hope, and it knows it. I crawl, dragging Lila, but she's gone, eyes blank. I sob, knowing I've lost her. The thing's still there, watching, like it's waiting for me to break. I stagger up, knife in hand, and run, leaving Lila behind. Guilt chokes me, but survival's all I've got. The road's close, maybe a quarter mile, but the hum's everywhere, in the trees, the river, my skull. I'm bleeding, dizzy, but I keep going, praying for a car, a miracle. The thing's letting me run, like it's part of the game. I'm not escaping. I'm just delaying the inevitable. I'm stumbling toward the road, blood dripping from my arm, the hum right behind me. The river's voice is deafening, screaming my name like it's claiming me. I think of Lila, left in the snow, and Amos, dead in his cabin. This is my fault. I came here, stirred something up. The thing's claws graze my back, and I scream, tripping over a root. I hit the ground hard, knife skittering away. The horror's complete. I'm alone, bleeding, and the land's alive, hungry. I think of that sketch, the figure I didn't draw, how it knew me from the start. I made a deadly mistake, thinking I could live here. The thing's above me, tall and wrong. Its face a blur of everyone I've lost. Lila, Amos, even my old self. Its eyes are voids, sucking me in. I scramble back, hands clawing snow, but there's nowhere to go. The river's chanting, and I realize it's not just sound. It's the thing, the land, all one. I think of Portland, my sketchbook, how I thought I'd find peace. What a tragedy. The thing kneels, claws hovering, and I know it's not quick. It wants me to feel this, to know I lost. I scream, but the forest swallows it, like it's always done. I'm crawling, desperate, but my strength's gone. The road's so close. I see headlights, faint, through the trees. Hope's cruel, dangling salvation I can't reach. The thing grabs my leg, dragging me back, claws tearing skin. Pain's all I know, sharp and endless. I think of Amos's warning, how the land's particular. I disturbed it, built my cabin on its bones. The hum's louder, in my head, my blood, saying my name like a curse. I made a mistake, thinking I was free out here. Alaska doesn't share, it takes. The headlights grow brighter, a truck maybe, but it's too late. The thing's on me, claws in my chest, ripping. I see Lila's face, Amos's, my own, twisted in its shifting skin. It's not just killing me, it's erasing me, making me part of the forest story. I think of that boot, the hunter who vanished, how no one found him. That's me now, another ghost. The river's laughing, and the thing's hum is a lullaby, pulling me under. My vision blurs, blood mixing with snow, and I know I'm done. I should have listened, should have left. I'm fading, the trucks rumble distant, useless. The thing leans close, breath like rot, and whispers something. Not words, but meaning. You don't belong. I see my cabin, empty, waiting for the next fool. The tragedy's mine, thinking I could outrun the land. My hand finds the snow, cold and final, and I think of my sketches, scattered, lost. The thing's claws tighten, and I'm gone, just another mark on the forest's tally. The hum stops, and the river's quiet, like it's satisfied. I'm nothing now, just snow and silence. I don't know how I'm still aware, but I feel it. The land, claiming me. My body's gone, but something's left, trapped in the trees, the river. I hear the hum, faint, circling, like it's waiting for someone new. I think of Lila, Amos, how we all paid for my mistake. The headlights fade, the truck never stopping, and I'm alone, or maybe I'm not. The forest's alive, and I'm part of it, a whisper in the wind. I came for freedom, but all I found was horror, cruel and eternal, buried in the snow. There's a flicker, like a memory, of my sketchbook, open on the cabin floor. The figure's there, drawn in black, but it's not alone now. There's me, Lila, Amos, all sketched in blood. The river's voice is back, soft, welcoming, pulling me deeper. I try to scream, but I've got no voice, no body. The land's won, and I'm its prize. My mistake was thinking I could live here, that I was stronger than Alaska. The hum starts again, faint, for someone else. The tragedy's complete, and I'm just another story, lost in the wild. I'm gone, but the forest remembers. The river keeps chanting, low and hungry, waiting for the next one to wander too far. My cabin's still there, empty, a trap for the next dreamer. I see it all, or maybe I'm imagining it, stuck in this endless cold. The thing's out there, hunting, and I'm part of it now, a shadow in the trees. I wanted solitude, but I got eternity, tied to this cruel land. The hum's my lullaby, and there's no waking up. Alaska took me, like it takes everyone, and the snow buries the rest. The river's quiet now, but it's not done. I feel it, the land, watching, waiting. Someone else will come, build a cabin, think they can handle it. They'll find my sketches, maybe, or Lila's thermos, or Amos's knife, and they'll wonder. But they won't know, not until it's too late. The thing's still out there, and so am I, or what's left of me. The horror's not over. It's just waiting, patient, like the forest. My mistake was thinking I could win. Now I'm part of the story, a tragedy carved in ice and blood.